he plays a good quarter. Plays a good quarter.
Good.
He plays
That's
a good
good
quarter.
pod intro is talking about Ben Simmons. Okay.
Welcome back.
No.
Ben Simmons will drive really strong once in the first quarter, and then he won't drive again for the rest of the game.
Oh,
Yeah,
happy Halloween,
They
everybody.
told him about the tank.
No,
probably.
he
They told him
drives.
they
He
told him not
drives
to play,
hard, so
probably.
they think he's gonna do it again. But then
This is all in the podcast.
fakes
also.
it.
You could edit it out. It's your job.
No,
man. Okay.
I'm telling you, it's all going to be in the podcast.
Okay, sure, that's fine.
He's
Welcome
setting up the
everyone
pass.
to episode 89 of the Looks Like a Movie podcast. My name's Kevin. I'm here with Doug and Owen, and today we're talking about the entirety of the Halloween franchise for our little Halloween special. But first, as always, we could talk about what we watched this past week. I know, Doug, you were just saying that you did not watch anything.
Well, I just wanted to throw. I did see Smile.
Okay.
I did
First
see
one.
Smile 2.
Oh,
No,
from last
just for like last
week.
week. I did see Smile 2 and I did see Terrifier 3, and I have really a lot to say about both. I think that they're both okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot.
You just said you have a lot to. That's.
No, it was a joke. It was a bit.
Oh,
It was
okay.
a joke.
I thought you.
No, it's because like I have a lot to say and then you don't say anything.
No,
right?
I get it. It's just
Yeah.
that like you seem like a big Terrifier guy, so I didn't read it as sarcasm because I just assumed you would
Oh,
have.
Doug, have you
what to say.
fallen less in love with those movies as time has
Yeah.
passed?
It seems
Because
like
you
don't
did lower your
Wow.
Terrifier 2 rating. I don't know when that happened, but I did
did.
notice that. And then you were not really excited for the third one, and then you're like, it's fine. So
Yeah.
I'm just interested on where you stand with the franchise at this point.
I think part of it has been I'm a little less like there's a charm to it, and I don't the third one didn't have the same level of that charm for me. I wasn't as charmed. There are some like big Terrifier fans that are like, bro, the third one is one of the greatest horror movies of all time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I thought that a lot of it was dumb. And I was
Okay.
not impressed with as much of it as I was with 2. Because even now, thinking back on 2, I'm like, oh, 2, Terrifier 2 is like an immediate like cult
Sure.
film. Like it's a cult film on arrival. Like it lands and then
Yeah.
boom, like and it hits. Terrifier 3, it's like it's not as like it doesn't go as far. Like 2 like really
Sure.
swung for the fences, and 3 is a little bit more like it's like a little cutesy. The kills aren't as crazy. They kill kids in the movie, right? And it's like kind of fucked up.
Kids in the movie, but it's not as crazy.
It's pretty
Right, no,
funny though.
yeah. It is
It's
funny. No,
they kill
one of
kids
my
in a funny way.
No,
Yes.
because the
The
bit with
bomb
the kids
scene?
is very silly.
there's a scene where Art the Clown a bunch of kids.
Yeah. And
We're 3
I don't
minutes
think
into
you
the
could put
episode.
that. Yeah, I don't think you could put that on
This
YouTube.
is a Halloween episode.
I'm gonna censor that. Don't worry. I'll actually help bleep that out.
Okay.
Yeah, no. There's a scene where he does that at like a shopping mall.
Yeah.
And it's like my favorite kill in the whole movie because of how funny it is. It's
I think
just like how the big centerpiece kill in 2 is this bit
Yeah.
where I'm gonna have to bleep this out too.
don't even describe
Just
it.
no, say it, please.
Like where he
Yeah.
skins her alive and then gets the salts, right? That's like the big
Mhm.
centerpiece kill in 2. That is
Yeah,
so funny.
You like that
Um,
more than when they up the kids.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of any of these movies is
Okay.
when he skins her alive and grabs the
Yeah.
salts.
So
But no, this
Okay.
one was fine. I think that part of my problem is that Terrifier 3 gets a little caught up in its lore, and I do not think that the lore of Terrifier.
there is
is
Terrifier
compelling.
lore.
Yes, yeah. It's
I
like
don't. I only seen the second one. I don't remember much lore.
The second one definitely has
they-
lore. And
It
then
has
they
lore.
expand on
What's
it,
the
so-
lore? Give me the quickest lore.
No, you don't need to know all that. It's not important.
What's
it's not.
one-
Well, it's
give
just
me
not
one
even like
bit.
memorable.
Give me
It's
one
just, like,
piece of lore.
Well,
Just a
it's like
little.
it's. I don't even. It's like this. There's like the sword, and she's
Yeah,
like an
she has a
angel.
sword.
Oh,
that
yeah,
can
she was
kill-
like
yeah, she
Wonder
turns into an
Woman.
angel, and she can
Yeah, she's
kill
like kind of
art.
Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And
What's
it's
that?
like-
What's the whole deal with that?
Well, it's interesting that they even mentioned Terrifier 3 in our Halloween episode because Terrifier 3, our main character, it's kind of like about her trauma, right?
Well, it is in many ways kind of the modern Halloween in terms of like a very small independent movie being really popular. Not as obviously popular as Halloween was when that came out, but it has the same sort of like really small movie with like a really big cult thing that's going on to have some sequels.
Yes.
But I think
and,
it's worthy to bring up.
Yeah, and Art the Clown has this very iconic look, similar
Yeah,
to
yeah,
Michael Myers, has a
of
very
course.
iconic look. I will say Michael Myers looks very stupid in a number of these films, in
A
my
hand
opinion.
number.
Fuck you, bitch. Okay.
Yeah, we'll get to Michael Myers. Oh, and did you watch anything this week that's not Halloween?
Yeah, so I watched two things. I rewatched Twixt because I'm for like research purposes, and then I watched The Trouble with Harry, which is a Hitchcock film. Really a fun Hitchcock film. Kind of resolve like the whole main kind of center of conflict is there's guys in the woods and they see a dead body, and you're just stumbling upon a dead body, and then there's like kind of different scenarios which different people stumble upon the dead body. It's kind of like no one kind of knows who killed this person, but people who stumble upon it are like, oh, maybe I killed this person. So there's a whole, it's a lot of like hijinks and kind of little funny. It's a comedy movie, but it's like got that Hitchcock kind of mystery to it a little bit with the dead body. Really like kind of classic autumn movie, really great colors. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I a lot of Halloween movies, so didn't watch much other than that.
Yeah. Um, so after last week's recording, I went to see We Live in Time, which I convinced myself to be very excited about, and then as a result was very let down by it. I think it's
Yeah,
fine, and it's like the exact kind of thing that a lot of people would like and enjoy because it's like so emotional, and you kind of just like anybody with a heart is gonna watch it and be like, yeah, that hurts, you know. But it's like
yeah, but you were like, fuck
it's just not
that.
really doing anything, and it's like and it's kind of pointless, and it's the script is a fucking disaster. Like none of it really makes sense outside of like trying to get people to cry and being like, hey guys, cancer, that shit ruins your life. And it's like, man, this is a real hot thing here. Like this is like it's like what are you saying? Like of course. Like it's like yeah, it's depressing when people have cancer and like lose loved ones. Like yeah, that sucks. But it's like the movie doesn't really try to do anything. So that's a
Yeah,
little disappointing.
So worse
Um
cancer film than The Fault in Our
without
Stars.
a doubt. Yeah.
Okay.
And I almost want to write an essay about this, except We Live in Time
An
is so
essay.
no, like I want to write like a long because I have a thing with The Fault in Our Stars that I think
Mhm.
is the reason why I think it's so successful. And like it's a weird thing to talk about because it is kind of like offensive almost, but it's not like just a me thing. Like I think this is actually the reason for The Fault in Our Stars like success is that similar like they use the cancer movie similar to like the way that people use like the teen depression movie like hospitalized teenager thing where it is like it's like an escapist fantasy for teenagers where it's like you have a life with no responsibility because you're like sick with cancer and people just take care of you and you only get like the joys of life like the falling in love without any of like the responsibility that comes with growing up and that's kind of what makes The Fault in Our Stars so good is that it's like just these two people falling in love and they get to like go on this grand vacation and like all this stuff and it's like none of like the like school's not in the movie and like none of like the things that actually like that you have to do with your life are in the movie and that makes it like this awesome like fantasy for teenagers even if it's fucking sad because you have like that's not the reality of what it's like to have cancer
It's
but a
like
lot of people respond to it that way and almost like I think a lot of teenagers would even want to be in that position even if it is like this actual miserable terrible thing that's happening to you but We Live in Time is not even trying to be about that so it's not like the fantasy it's like it actually faces the reality and it's the opposite it's like how do you like deal with this and like live your life to the fullest which to me is just like kind of boring. I don't know. Like I'd rather watch the fantasy. Like, you know.
so The Fault in Our Stars is like Everything is Romantic by Charlie XCX.
Sure. I yeah, why not?
there's got to be an edit somewhere of that online.
For sure, a million
Mhm.
percent.
Without a
Well,
doubt.
The Fault in Our Stars has kind of
If
fallen out
the
of
movie
public
came out
Yeah,
popularity.
I don't think The Fault in
now,
Our
yeah.
Stars is exactly TikTok edit material. It what if
Oh, I'm sure
TikTok
there are
like
edits. There's maybe
no,
not that
there
combo.
are, but like can you imagine how many Fault in Our Stars TikTok edits there would be if TikTok was a thing in 2014? Like it would be
Bro,
absurd.
John
Uh
Green, if John Green came around now, like he
yeah.
did back then, he would be the most famous person in the world.
Yeah, no, he would be huge. I mean the movie was huge. But anyway, We Live in Time bleh. Terrifier 3 I rewatched with my friends actually, and I liked it even more this time around. I'm just a fan. I think it has maybe the funniest scene in any movie I've seen this year, actually. I don't think I've laughed as hard in a theater as when Art the Clown meets Santa Claus. I think it is so
Oh yeah.
silly. And similar to the bombing thing, not to bring up the bombing again, but there's just like little bits that like happen in the movie, which I'm sure this is in Terrifier 2, and I would like it if I rewatched it now. But like just like the idea that there's like this lore behind the bag that he carries around and like how it just is like an endless pit of weapons. And then he like goes to the
Oh, you could tell
mall
me
and is
about
like
that.
he's like Santa Claus at the mall, and then like you think that the kids are just gonna reach into the bag and find like like a corpse or like a weapon or something, and then there's just like stuffed animals in there.
Yeah.
It's like
And
it's
then a
just really
bomb at the
silly.
end at the end of it.
Yeah, sure, and
Yeah.
then the bomb, yeah, but
Yeah, when
but
he
it's
bombs
just
the
silly that
kid.
his bag transforms into like
No,
Santa
it's
Claus's
literally
like
bro,
sack.
Owen, this kid, so it's like he drops his bag and all these kids are taking presents out of the bag, and this one kid reaches into the bottom of the bag and gets a present,
Yeah,
and Arthur Connor has walked away by this point, and he opens up the
yeah.
present and there's a
He's like,
bomb
I
goes
wonder what
off.
I wonder what I got, and he's like unwrapping the box,
Wait, that's
And it's like
and he
awesome.
it's
opens
like
the
a
top of the
9-year-old
box, and it
kid.
just blows up.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
No, it's so awesome. That's my favorite scene in the movie for sure.
Yeah, I watched this really shitty Tubi movie called Clinton Road. This is for a very niche, looks like a movie audience, like collective.
It doesn't get much more niche than our
But if
podcast
you're
already.
from New Jersey, you will know what Clinton Road is. It is famously one of the most haunted places in America, quote unquote haunted. If whether or not it's actually haunted is whatever. But there's so much like mythology behind it, and they turned it into like the shittiest movie imaginable. I don't know why Owen has a Kevin Durant bobblehead, because I don't think that has to do with New Jersey at all. He's wearing a Brooklyn Nets jersey
Go Nets.
with New Jersey Nets jersey.
Well, he
Anyway,
never
if you're
he
from
never
if you're from
played
New Jersey, do not watch the Clinton Road movie. You will be disappointed.
KD.
I saw Conclave,
This
which I
was
guess we won't be talking about on the podcast until Oscar season, because I don't think either of you really want to watch it. It's fun. It's like it pissed me off, I think, because of the time that it came out. I got a little bit in my head and I was like, this is really annoying. But the problem is that before it got annoying, I was actually having so much fun with it that I kind of like am still conflicted. And I was like, you know what? I kind of like this movie. Like, it's fine. It's dumb. And I don't think it looks very good. And I think the score is
the
really
Bergman.
annoying.
It's gonna be nominated for best
Um,
cinematography
oh, without a doubt, yeah.
because of the Bergman. He's got like a gun to other
Yeah,
Oscars' heads.
but it's like it's fun.
With
It's
a
like a good
gunshot to that
time.
camera.
And then I think everything after that is Halloween stuff, except for a documentary that I have been wanting to watch ever since it played festivals last year, that I've just been waiting to come out, and I had no idea it was coming out until I saw a tweet about it the
Who
other day.
tweeted?
I don't know. It was like somebody saying it was like some
Was it
random account. I was like,
was
this
it
is on
Pooh
Netflix
Crave?
now. No, it wasn't Pooh Crave. It was anyway. The documentary is The Remarkable Life of Evelyn, which is like a
Oh
documentary
yeah.
about this gamer who passed away,
Oh
and
yeah.
his parents like find his login and meet all of these people that he knew on the internet, and they thought this whole time that he was like this isolated person who was living like the worst life imaginable, and then they find out he like had an entire community of people online that like cared about him. And it's just so,
I feel
man,
like
he
that
just
played at
What game did he
festivals a
play?
while
Was it
ago.
RuneScape or
it was World of Warcraft.
oh, it was World of
And
Warcraft.
the documentary is really cool because they go back and find exact logs of the messages that like the role play messages that him and his friends in World of Warcraft would send to each other, and they use animation to like recreate the scenes exactly as they were typing
That's
them. And
cute.
so they like make it in
That
World of
is
Warcraft.
cute.
It is such a lovely movie, dude. And like it's like, listen, it's weird because I think it's like a weird thing to talk about, where it's like it's important that like the internet builds community in a way, and at the same time like you need to still be able to like live life off of the internet. But like in the case of like the subject of the documentary, he has a muscular disease that stops him from being able to leave his house.
Yeah.
And so like the fact that he's able to find community through the internet is just so nice. And it just like you just start crying like 2 minutes into it, and then you just cry like the whole time, dude. It really gets you. And the World of Warcraft stuff is so fucking cute. Like you just like, I don't want to say too much because I think people should really just like watch it if it sounds interesting to them.
Yeah, no, I wanted to watch that too.
I'm glad I got around to it. Definitely one of my favorites of the year, I would say. Were you gonna add to that?
I wanted to shout out the return of my favorite television show starting today, Special Ops Lioness, starring Zoe Saldana and Nicole Kidman, written
Mhm.
by Taylor Sheridan. Is
Yeah, one of the
returning
goats, some
season
people would
2.
say.
Taylor, I like this show. I haven't watched any. Well, I've seen
You've seen one of
Sicario.
his movies.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've seen Sicario.
That's the
Yeah,
only
yeah,
one?
yeah.
You haven't seen what is it, Wind River or Hell or High Water?
No, have you?
Interesting. Yeah, I've seen both of them.
Are they good?
I think Hell or High Water, really solid movie, really good actually. Wind River,
Is that
little
the one
Wind,
with Jeremy
Wind
Renner? Which
River
one's
has
the?
yes.
Okay.
shooters. Wind River has
Yeah, no,
shooters.
people
Well,
love Wind
Taylor
River.
Sheridan in general has shooters.
Yes, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
people
But
absolutely love
specifically
Wind
Wind
River.
River.
I think Wind River is fine. I think what's it called? Hell or High Water. I think he wrote Hell or High Water, right? Am I crazy?
I'm not super familiar with his work, to be
I
honest.
okay, yes, he did write Hell or High Water. I think Hell or High Water is awesome. That movie is really good. Much better than Wind River, I think, which is I guess a hot take since people love Wind River.
Better than
but-
Sicario.
Hot take.
Better than Sicario. I might have it rated higher than Sicario, but I'd have to rewatch Sicario to really.
Sicario is shot by Roger Deakins.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's directed
Right.
by Kevin's favorite filmmaker.
Yes. Circa 2021.
Yeah, just wanted to shout that out though, because I'm going to be the only person involved with this podcast production that.
Watches a show that you might be the only person in America that watches the show.
No.
I'm
No,
kidding.
no, America rides and dies.
there's-
by
there's,
Taylor
someone brought up,
Sheridan's
I
side.
forget what I was listening to where
Taylor
the other
Sheridan,
day where somebody brought
2024.
up like a good point about like television or just like media consumption in the country where they were saying like
Media.
you know like if you make like if I were to make a TikTok about like some of these shows that are like like these like random shows like it would get like 4 views because nobody on TikTok cares about it, but then
If
like
you post that shit on
among
Facebook,
but like among American audiences it actually has like
it would
20
go
million
triple
people
flat.
watching
It would
I'm
be
gonna
like
become a
AI,
Facebook.
like AI posts, and then it
Yeah.
would be Kevin's fucking TikTok.
No, but it's
I'm
like
gonna become a
some of these things
Facebook
have like really
lioness,
huge fan bases
influencer.
and only one demographic, and so like
Mhm.
you think it's like a thing that nobody cares about, and then you realize every week like 15 million people are
Well, it
tuning in
was
to watch it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nobody
yeah,
in
yeah.
their 20s is watching the show, but they're like probably millions of people above the age of 40 are watching the show.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we exploit those people?
Probably by
Facebook, I
not making
guess.
TikToks. Yeah, you
Yeah.
might have to move to a new platform.
We want to get
Um,
on. We gotta go on Kick or like Truth Social.
Kick?
or-
What?
Okay, let's talk about Halloween. Let's start, I guess, like a bit general before we just go movie by movie in release order. We could kind of just like start by
A
talking
bit
about,
general by meaning like the first movie or like
no, just like the franchise as a whole. Maybe just like talk about our own relationships to it, like when we first watched a Halloween movie, which ones we've seen, which ones were first time watches during this binge, etc. I could go first. I mean, I
Okay.
watched the original Halloween movie several times growing up. Pretty not like maybe not every Halloween, but I would say at least every other year for most of my like life from the age of like 12 and up, I guess. I've seen it at least like 10 times by now probably. But the thing is I never really watched most of the sequels. There was like maybe 1 or 2 that would be playing on TV. But I was always a huge fan of the first one. And then like when that 2018 like new one came out, that whole new trilogy, I saw all 3 of those in theaters, and like for some reason I was really excited when the 2018 one came out, even though I had never seen any of the sequels. I think because like you went into it knowing it was only a sequel to the first one, so I was
Well,
just like,
yeah,
so
they kind of
connected
they
to the
do
world
a
of it.
good job, sort of, by being like, you don't have to fucking watch these. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, hey,
That's
you
like
can just
every
jump
kind of
in, pretty much.
iteration, you know, like these are all split into different things, and each one that
Yeah.
it's split into is like, no, the awesome thing about ours is that you don't have to watch the others. And they change the story like 4
Yeah.
or 5 times in the
We'll
franchise.
talk a lot about that in
Yeah.
this episode, but they it's like they're either a sequel to the first one or a sequel to the first two, or they're like
Yeah.
scrap this.
Or
It's a
they're
lot of
their
bouncing
own new
around.
movies entirely. Like it's yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I mean, I want to say I'm a huge fan, but it's like I really was only ever just a huge fan of the original, and that was kind of my relationship. And then I saw the new ones when they came out in theaters, and only really during this binge did I go back and watch a lot of these for the first time. Doug,
I'm not sure if I ever watched the original before I watched all of them for this, to be honest. I
really?
think maybe the first Halloween movie I watched was the 2018 one in theaters. I'm
Damn.
not 100% sure, but I think that might have been the case. And I watched all three of these David Gordon Green films in theaters as they came out. Um, and
that's so silly to watch those and like not seeing the
But that's
first one.
probably true for a
No,
lot of
I'm
people,
sure. I'm
especially
sure a
like
ton of people.
young listeners of the podcast. Like if you're of a certain age and you just didn't grow up watching the
Yeah,
original, then you probably did just start when those
I
new ones
mean,
came out.
it's not that long ago. It's a couple of years ago, but I remember seeing like all those trailers when those movies were coming out, and I only saw the first one like a couple of years ago.
Right.
yeah, and then after that I watched the I was interested in the Rob Zombie ones and I really like those a lot. And but then that's kind of like where my interest ended. I had seen the three David Gordon Green ones, and then I watched the two Rob Zombie ones, and I was
Yeah,
like,
David Gordon Green,
Yeah,
Rob Zombie. That's all
probably
you.
no point in watching the original. I mean,
yeah,
that's not
I was like, got it, I got it.
Yeah, that's all you
Wipe my
need.
hands. And then and now I've seen all of them now because of
yeah.
this. But yeah,
So, but Owen, you had seen. I know,
Yeah, I
probably
mean,
all recently, but you had seen all these sequels before you had to rewatch them for the
so
whole.
I hadn't seen the David Gordon Green ones
Right.
until now, but I've seen all the other ones because I watched like I kind of went through them all like 2 years ago because I had watched like Scream. I think I probably already watched all the Nightmare on Elm Streets and like a bunch of that like just kind of the classic slashers. I think
better
at this point,
franchises.
yeah, I think at this point the only big franchise I haven't seen is all the Friday the 13th movies. But but
Yeah.
I was like really into slashers, and I remember watching the first Halloween and being kind of like disappointed because it is like, I mean, we'll get into it, but it is like an early version of what those other movies become. Obviously, like something like Black Christmas is before, but like the Screams and the Nightmare on Elm Streets have come later and kind of evolved what you really think of now as the slasher. So like going into it being like, oh, this is Halloween. I wasn't crazy about it, but we'll talk about that more later. But then I watched all the sequels, and then I was like kind of burnt out because there's like a lot of them, so I just didn't
Yeah.
watch the three movies that everyone says are awful because I was like they're also
Okay,
separate.
not
everyone
everybody
doesn't.
says
That's not
that.
actually
Not
true.
everybody says that.
Not everyone, but they're not like.
I think the average. I will say this, and I don't know if
You
this
think
is
that
true.
average person is like those are solid?
I think the
Mhm.
average. Not only do I. No, not the two, but the 2018 one.
Specifically the
I
2018
think
one,
is the average person's idea of the best
like legacy
non-original
sequel.
movie.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah,
I
I
think
don't
the
know.
average person thinks that the 2018 Halloween is the second best
It
Halloween.
was also easy, like again to go into like the whole like timeline thing. It was also easy for me to like be like, okay, I've watched all these. I don't need to start a new timeline right now because like
Yeah.
there was nothing like there's no like cliffhanger really because it was like everything I've seen like existed at a point and there's no like thing that I'm like missing from these. Like the three movies that I would be watching would just be like separate things.
Yeah.
So I didn't watch those and then I watched them for this and I rewatched most of them for this.
Right. Um. We could just go movie by movie, I
I
guess.
think it's smart too.
I
I
think
did kind of
it's
want to ask you guys like
yeah.
generally about like Michael Myers as like a horror person, but I guess we'll talk about him
I
so
think
much
yeah,
as
yeah. I
we
mean,
see
we
that.
should probably do more of that stuff like after we talk about all of them. I
Sure.
think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess let's start obviously with the original Halloween.
Yeah.
1978 is the year that the first one comes out. I think I like this one a great deal more than the two of you.
Mhm.
Is my
It's a good movie.
understanding.
Yeah, you do, but it's a good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might call it a
I
perfect.
like it more. It was a movie that I was always like, I don't really kind of have like an in. and I was kind of struggling, but I was always like really interested in it. And I think watching it now, I finally kind of have an appreciation for the kind of things that it's doing, and kind of because there was always some disconnect, and there still is for me with Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode, like not being like the hugest fan of her as like a lead for a franchise. But I think I've become more interested in Michael, and I think it's in the way that Carpenter kind of explores like the lonely streets of like suburbia in this film is really interesting. I think it's also like really shot well. But yeah, it's not my favorite movie of all time, but I think it is one of the better movies that we're gonna talk about today for
Yeah.
sure. Like I think it's just like there's some undeniable elements to it that kind of stand far away from some of the other movies.
Yeah.
But it's not like my favorite movie of all time. But it's like it's a kind of a struggle for me because it seems like there's so many elements of like a kind of really big popular slasher movie that it's like this should be like one of my favorite movies. But it just doesn't all work for me. But I think the benefit of something like this is there's 13 movies, so there's like a lot to love in a lot of different areas. And when you're trying new different things, it's a franchise that I overall do really like. It's just not something that I overall probably really love. But yeah, that's kind of my overall feel on things. Is but more like kind of this movie.
I wonder if you like for both of you because of like when this movie came about for the two of you, if that plays a role. Like obviously, Doug, you just said that you didn't watch it until like you had seen, six other Halloween movies. So like I don't know if that I mean, I don't think it would matter much, but it's like obviously like for me this was the point of reference for a while before I even compared it to any of the other Halloween movies. I don't know though. I do just think it's kind of like
Yeah.
fucking awesome. I think like the atmosphere is perfect. That's like
Mhm.
one of the big like there's like a couple things that I think just like define these movies for me and like separate like the good ones from the great ones or even the good ones from the bad ones
Sure.
and like so on. And like the biggest thing for me is that like these are Halloween movies and these are movies that I want to watch around Halloween and like that's kind of like the appeal. And I think a lot of them kind of like abandon the idea of like trying to fit the vibes of like the season and make it this kind of like Halloween like spooky season kind of thing. And the first one is just like it just nails it. Like it has like the
Yeah.
best atmosphere. It just like every time I put you could put it not literally, but like it feels like I could just like put it on in like the springtime and watching it, I would think that it's like October 31st. Like it's just so like it just matches the vibe so perfectly. And that part kind of means a lot to me. But also I think Carpenter is kind of great at like understanding like where the horror is in these movies, which is kind of like the
Mhm.
Michael Myers like creeping on you aspect and like this idea that like he could not be there at all and you still think he's there. And I think this movie probably is the best example of like getting that feeling down of like this idea of like this boogeyman that for like a kid who has nightmares about it is incomprehensible. Like it's just like you kind of just like think he's in the closet or like you think he's around and like
He,
there's like what
you think
like he's
he's
like
what?
okay, Jesus Christ.
Michael, they made Michael
Oh
Myers woke, woker
no, but you know
Myers.
what I mean? It's like it is like like you just kind of like think he's like there watching you and I think that that is not always the feeling that a lot of the other movies go for. And this movie like knows how to do that
Yeah. No.
so well. So I think like that is probably the appeal to me. Like it's almost like I know you said the Jamie Lee Curtis thing, but it's almost like that I guess means a little bit less to me
Sure.
because
No. Yeah.
like I don't know that she has to be the best character for me to like get anything out of it because that's
I
not
don't think she does either. I think
for
it's more
me.
of like what I'm looking for. But I no, I agree with you. I would like to say I think Carpenter as like a filmmaker like gets better. So that's another thing for me is like I really like a bunch of Carpenter movies more, and I think it's important to say that like this is like really early on in his career. he had made like 2 features before this, and again, this is like a really small movie, and the success of this movie kind of makes Carpenter who he is today, and like he went on to make a bunch of movies because of kind of the success of Halloween.
This
Um,
movie by itself is basically what gave him the reputation as like the
oh yeah,
horror, like the goat of horror movies.
I mean,
I
yeah,
know
he
like
goes
this
on
and
to
the thing, but
do
like
yeah, the
yeah.
thing with but
I think
it
it's
can
those two in tandem with each other. Like once that happens,
yeah,
it's
for
just that's the
sure.
label.
And I think he has again just better movies, movies that I like more. But I don't. It's like I like this movie. It's just
I like
Yeah.
yeah, I like
it's
this movie
it's
too.
it's something like it's kind of like it's just a weird thing. It's like a weird thing where
Michael
it's like it
Myers.
is kind of Halloween is like it's Halloween. When
Yeah.
you think of like horror movies, like Halloween is like on top of that like list of just like popular horror movies, like the franchise, like Halloween. That's got a perfect kind of franchise title. And it's something that you want to be like, oh, this is the best thing ever. But I do have. It's just I don't know. It's like a it's one of those things. It's like it's
It's
great, but it's not like perfect.
so you say that Carpenter gets better, which I'm sure is true, but I
Yeah.
do think that the language in this film is like the cinematic language in this film is pretty advanced, and it is like the
Oh yeah,
most
no, it's not
impressive
like a amateur
technical
film. It's not like
film in this entire
yeah.
franchise, probably. Um, it is shot super well, but beyond that, right? Beyond it being like a very well made film, it I don't know. It's not moving mountains for me, which I think is
Yeah.
fine. It's interesting that Owen brought up like Jamie Lee Curtis. I think Jamie Lee Curtis has like a good performance in this movie. She's so young,
Well,
right?
that's the thing is Jamie Lee Curtis is interesting because we this kind of franchise spans for like 50 years.
Mhm.
And Jamie Lee Curtis goes through stages of her like the way she acts and like her
Yeah.
ability, and it's really interesting. Like because we'll talk about the different movies, and Jamie Curtis is just like a pro and a negative in some of these movies. Like she'll go through swings, and here she's kind of just like a neutral, but like I'd want kind of more out of like a lead, I guess.
But I will say I don't think that Laurie Strode is like an iconic character. I guess like objectively she is culturally, right? But like there's nothing iconic about
She
Laurie Strode
kind
to
of
me. Like
well,
which
she
is also a
becomes
problem I have
more
with some of these other movies.
yeah,
Um
I guess they treat her more like iconic in like the later things, and they kind of like the way that she's used in like the narrative structures of the later films. Like it's like she just kind of becomes iconic, but in the first movie, she's just kind of the girl that. But that's kind of the I guess the point of the film is like she's just the girl that Michael is
it could
happens to.
happen to
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah,
It's like yeah, no, I understand.
That's also like that's true for most like almost every especially slasher franchise. The main character is the villain. Like the main character is the guy.
yeah, I
The
don't,
killer.
I know, I,
Um but
I
yeah, it is I get what you mean. Her performances do vary and like the character definitely varies from movie to movie and a lot of the like later
what
movies
happened? Yeah,
treat her like as a horror icon as opposed to just like yeah, especially that like new trilogy, the way that they kind of like maybe not even the new trilogy, even like kind of some of the other ones, especially the movies right before
Every
the Rob
single one she's
Zombie
in, every
ones.
single one she's in treats her it's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah.
It's
yeah. Um we could go to Halloween 2 if you guys want, speaking of other movies that she's in.
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Halloween 2 is you can kinda
1981,
talk
by the way.
about, with pretty closely with the first movie, like, it
Yeah.
feels very much like a direct continuation, like, as it is, but the big thing that this movie, like, kind of brings to the table, is they provide a bit of information in this film that is not something that was written in the first movie, it's something that John Carpenter wrote for the second movie, and it is the kind of relationship that is added to these two characters, and it is that uh, Laurie Strode was originally Michael Myers' sister. She was 2 years old, and the Michael Myers stuff happens, and then they put her up for adoption, and they change her name and all this stuff. But you learn that information, and that's kind of a bit of information that is kind of played with, and uh, you know, this is not true in this movie. It's true in this movie. Depends on like the timeline we're
Yeah.
in, but
Yeah.
it's kind of a big deal in this film. Um, what else do we want to talk about with this film other than kind of that as a bit of
You know,
information that
I
we get
think
here?
the problem for me is that, like, when the binge started for me, like, immediately watching this movie, like, starting with this movie, I was like, "Oh, this
Yeah.
is, like, way better than I thought it would be." Like, it was, like,
Hmm.
really fun, and then after I
Yeah.
watched so many of them, I was just like, "This is kinda close to the bottom for me." Like, I was like, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that I was gonna enjoy so many of the other ones as much as I did. I think I think I will say, similar to what I was saying about the first one, like, atmosphere-wise, I think it's really cool because, like, the
Yeah.
hospital, like, as a setting is, like, super fun, and it's just, like,
Hmm.
it's kinda dope to just spend most of the movie in, like, an empty hospital, almost a hospital that's, like, too empty. It's, like, weird how empty
Well, it's kind
the
it
hospital is.
becomes the empty streets of
Yeah,
Haddonfield just
yeah.
become the hospital.
Exactly. And so that stuff I really like, but like outside of that, when I compare it to most of the other sequels, other than like the straight up bad ones, it's
Yeah.
pretty low on the list for me.
This is much less impressive than the first Halloween, I think.
Yeah.
In all ways, in concepts and in like direction. I think that it's shot pretty well, but that's I think you could probably attribute that to the cinematographer coming over,
Well, so
right?
that I wanted to just kind of bring up a bunch of people because there's
Yeah.
a lot of people to mention that were involved in these first two, and you mentioned the cinematographer Dean Cundley, who is really uh Dean Cundy, who's really like kind of involved in these movies. He has a crazy. I'm just like gonna look at Letterbox and be like the three Back to the Future movies, Jurassic Park, The Thing, Halloween, and like a million other movies. He does Halloween, he does Halloween 2, he does Halloween 3. I think that might just be those three. If I might there might be another one, I might be mistaken. But so the first three look incredible, and a lot of it has to do with Dean Cundy just being amazing. I also want to just bring up Rick Rosenthal
Yeah.
as the director of this movie, and he does direct a later movie that does not
That's
have Dean Cundy
awful. Yeah.
cinematographer, which we'll get to. But it you kind of I mean it is like a 20-year gap, but it is when you take away all the good stuff.
Especially when you look at the filmographies. If you look
Yes,
at like Dean
yes,
Cundy's filmography, like you're saying,
and
and then
then
you look at the director Rick
yes,
Rosenthal's
yes,
filmography, and then especially the cinematographer of the
mhm.
later movie that Rick Rosenthal does, you're like, oh, there's a stark difference here. Like it's
Who
like
did this one? Oh yes,
he does like
yeah,
his biggest credit is like Tucker and
Tucker,
Dale versus
yeah,
Evil
yeah,
or something. Like
yeah.
it's a huge difference.
And Rick Rosenthal, notably the director of The Birds 2, yeah, he did this. And I also
He's just a big second movie
we
guy.
didn't talk about yeah, we didn't talk about him in about the first movie, but one of my favorite parts and someone that really becomes like the main character opposite of Michael for me in these movies, and someone that I'm like, oh, this guy, I love him so much, is Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis. And I think he's really good in this second one, and that it's kind of like Laurie is just kind of in the hospital, and it
Yeah.
becomes kind of this like it becomes more of like a slasher as we know it in terms of just like people just dying, and Michael kind of gets to do a lot more in terms of killing people in this movie.
Yeah.
But in terms of just another like Donald Pleasance is not going to give a bad performance, even if he's like about to die. Like he's just going to show up.
Yep.
He's literally just going to be like really amazing. And this is obviously being like an earlier film. He's really good in here as well. But I wanted to bring him up before we got too far into the franchise.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think he's like a
oh,
very
I mean,
he's consistent throughout the franchise, and that like
even if the movie sucks, he's just going to be
even if the
like
movie sucks,
giving
or
it
even if the
all.
character feels different than it did in the previous entry,
Yeah.
he's always like doing something interesting, and like he's always fun to watch.
Yeah, what Halloween is really about, like the franchise, what it's about Dr. Loomis freaking out over Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what these movies are really about
Well,
at the end of the day.
that
It's not
and
really
it
about Laurie
and
Strode.
you kind of
and like whether
need
or
that.
not we
Like you
understand
need
him.
him, like his energy, because obviously Michael doesn't talk, and Laurie Strode is pretty like. I mean, unless she's getting chased, she's pretty kind of flat in terms of like. I mean, it's there's some movies where she's kind of crazy, but in terms of like these earlier movies, she's kind of like just a normal girl. So when you have this doctor who is like just like speaking in like these like fucking whatever, and like he's just speaking in movie quotes, and he has this great voice, and he's very like over the top, and he's kind of crazy himself. It is a good combo with Michael Myers is more just like he's just gonna stand there and not gonna say anything, like vibe to him. So I like you could definitely like if he Donald Pleasance did not come back for like some of these later movies, they would be a lot worse. Like they kind of some of them would be just kind of unwatchable without him. Some of them are, but he kind of brings some like glimmer to them. Do
Yeah.
we? How much more do we want to talk about two? Do I move on to
Oh, we don't have to
three?
talk about it
I
anymore.
don't.
We can
Yeah,
move on to three.
it's a pretty minor
It's
minor
yeah.
thing to Halloween
Yeah.
2. It's a direct sequel to the first Halloween
Uh,
movie that didn't
it-
need to be exist.
Well, so it kind of what's it called? John Carpenter was like, okay, we made a movie. Good, we'll move on to the next movie, and it's a big deal. Halloween's a big deal, so you have to make a sequel. So this kind of there's famous stories of Carpenter writing this movie drunk and not really giving a shit. And I think for all intents and purposes, it came out like a solid little sequel. And yeah, I always kind of I'm like struggle to remember exactly, but where do Michael burns at the end of the movie?
Yes.
So because a lot of these movies have this
Michael
thing
Myers,
of
he like dies at
well,
the
a lot,
end.
yes. So every Halloween movie after the first one, it is like, okay, guys, we gotta kill this guy. Like it's gotta
Yeah.
end. We gotta stop this. And then
Except
they
for
try to
some
kill it.
reason, there's like consistently the moral through line of like, no, let's just lock him up, or let's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like put him in a psych ward, and
Well,
it's like
every
he
movie
just
is like
will escape.
every movie is like the trauma is coming back, that like the horror is coming back. We have to end this, and then they try to end it like 10 more times.
Yeah.
But so let's hop into it. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Yeah. Doug, you
Uh,
think this is the best one?
Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, 1982. Is it the best Halloween film?
I think it's a conversation.
I
But
think
I-
there's a conversation. No, probably not. But there's a
I think
conversation.
no,
to be
no.
had.
I think there's a conversation for like four of these movies to be the best. and
4.
Yeah, I would say 4.
Okay.
I think that Halloween 3 is very notable. Obviously, it does not feature Michael Myers, but
Yeah.
a step further than that, this is not a slasher. This is not
Yeah.
a slasher at all. This is a weird like cult
Yeah.
TV freakout film.
And it's
The
awesome.
thing about this one is that like anybody who approaches it from the lens of like it's not a Halloween movie is just like sure to enjoy it. Like it's like it almost
Yeah.
seems like the only negative reaction you could have to this movie is that like
Yeah.
you were just
you
such a big
wanted
Michael Myers
Michael
fan that like you never got over the fact that there's a movie without
But
him.
the
But, like,
thing
you
is,
can't
it's
just like
like
watch this as a standalone movie and be like, I didn't like that. Like it's like
He-
so good.
Halloween 4 exists. Like it's like you could basically just be like, this movie doesn't exist. It like exists
Yeah.
separately, and then there's just like all these other movies, and it's like not like they like nothing like bad
Yeah.
happened to Michael because.
Well,
of
I think there's like an interesting conversation there with like the lasting impact of immediate reactions to movies. Because
yeah,
the thing is like so much of the negative response, like immediately when this came out, would then like cause people in the future to just assume that it is bad because people hated it before. And I feel like that happens with a lot of movies where like they build a reputation specifically because people didn't like them at the time, and then
for
people
like very
watching them-
specific things.
yeah, and then people watching them in the future have to like then like they almost like approach it like that, where they like see this movie that people were like, oh, they tore this movie, like it has like the worst ratings, so they're like, it's probably shit, and then they watch it being like, yeah, it's shit, and then they don't like it, and it's like, no, it's actually just good.
This movie has a really bad marketing problem. It's kind of a colossal failure in marketing because not only is it not a sequel to the film called Halloween 2, it also is not about witches. So it's like
That's also true.
you
Yeah, I
know,
didn't
so
even
it's
think
like
about that, but
imagine
that's also
the
a
movie
Well,
comes
there's
out
like-
and you're going to watch it. You're getting like so
it's like
Yeah.
kind of about witches.
There's like
but,
magic.
there's magic involved.
yeah.
But it's not-
there's no
calling it
witches. in the
Halloween-
There is not a
film.
witch in the movie.
Yeah.
There's not. There's
Calling it
similar
Halloween
to No
3
Michael Myers. There's
Season
no
of the
witch.
Witch is like Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
Um,
more it's more like it's like a cult film about a guy that wants to kill a bunch of kids on Halloween,
yeah.
uh,
yeah.
through
But
their
I will
TV.
say, similar again, going back to what I said about the original Halloween, is that this is one of the closest movies, like in terms of movie that you want to watch on Halloween.
Oh
Like in
yeah,
terms
this
of
is an
like the Halloween
all-time.
vibes, it's like the
Yeah.
original, and then it's this, I think, or like one other movie that I think kind of fits the bill. But like it's like the perfect example of like movie you actually want to watch in the season. I don't know. I
And it's like a chill watch. It's like a
Yeah, it's like
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
fun.
it's so cute.
it's
I
fun.
love
It's easy to watch. There's great
um
performances from like
well
Tom
that
Atkins.
that's the thing is with
Yeah, I
Yeah,
this
think Tom Atkins.
when I watch this movie and watch Halloween, like I'm like, oh, I love these guys so much. Tom Atkins and Stacey Nelkin are
yeah,
so great. And one thing that really intrigues me and watching it again for this, I really picked up on it. And it kind of is like a really interesting way that it connects like thematically, I guess, to Halloween is this movie has it's pulling a lot from Psycho in a different way than Halloween, like the original movie was, because obviously Halloween is very inspired by Psycho. But when watching this movie, I was like, oh, this movie starts like the second half, like the second act, I guess, of Psycho, where it's like what Sam Loomis's character in the original Psycho, who's then Dr. Loomis is named after. He is basically Tom Atkins' character, and Stacey Nelkin is basically I'm forgetting her name, but Marion Crane's sister. Where it's
mhm,
like the someone dies, and then a guy, and then someone she's related to have to go investigate like what's happening. And like that's like the setup of this movie, and that's just the setup of what happens after the shower sequence in Psycho. And I thought that was really interesting. I want to like rewatch it and like kind of investigate that kind of thought more, but that was something I kind of picked up on this watch. There's also the most amazing movie jingle of all time in this movie. It's so
it's so
awesome.
annoying. It's so
It's so
bad.
awesome. I love it so much. I
I
I
think
think
it's
there mi
fun.
I think there is a movie better than this movie, but I kind of it's hard for me to rank these movies because there's like I think there's a lot that kind of fall into like the same area, but I think I have like 4 like sections of like
Yeah, well, that's what I was
quality.
gonna say. I think if you rank these movies in tiers, it is actually the easiest thing
It's
imaginable
easier
to do.
because I think I have there's 2 movies that are kinda like 1A, 1B, and then there's about 5 movies that fit in this like clump of like these are really solid, and then there's like 2 movies that are like decent, and then there's like 4 movies that I'm like, oh, these aren't great. And I
Yeah,
think this fits for me, and that like this is like the best of the franchise for me because it like if this wasn't a Halloween movie, it's like, oh, this I just love this movie. But
yeah,
it's kind of weird to rank it and like fit it in all this, obviously, because
Yeah,
it's like doesn't have Michael Myers and it's just like it's just a horror movie. And that was I mean we could talk a little bit about that being like they were like, okay, Michael Myers, we did all we want to do with him, but we still want to do like the original idea was to make a Halloween anthology thing where it's like how the Halloween as a franchise would just be and like just different horror movies set at Halloween. They didn't realize that Michael Myers was like a really big cultural thing. Where I don't know how I didn't realize that. It might
yeah.
have
It
been
seems pretty
it
obvious when
might
you're
have been
making it.
it might have been like the timing. Maybe they started this a little early like,
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know the timing on it or why that happened, but they didn't realize that people really liked Michael Myers, which
yeah,
I don't know how that happened. Um, so they were like, okay, we're gonna do this movie, and then the movie came out, and everyone obviously hated it because no Michael Myers was in it. So then they get, later they bring him back. We talked a little bit about that, but that was kind of the original idea was the anthology idea. So the plan was to make more movies like this, which it sucks because I think that would have been a really cool opportunity to kind of
yeah,
and it's an idea that I think would be interesting um if they could capitalize something like that now where it would be like kind of like what Del Toro did with the Cabinets of Curiosities, just like big movies, and you could kind of just get like these different horror directors and bring them on, and they would kind of have a bigger platform because it was like a people like how like the Halloween movies, so they go see the next anthology movie, but you can kind of just
yeah.
bring in different people and I think it would be a good opportunity to like start. I don't know. It'd be good like kind of career starter, I guess, in that way.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting idea for like a franchise, but it's just like kind of bringing people in and they can do their own ideas and do their own spin on it. But it doesn't have like the tie-in of like iconic characters or like fandoms really tied to it because you're doing unique things in that kind of anthology setting.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about, yeah, just because like you referenced like people that are working on the movie before, I
Yeah.
did want to throw out the producer, uh Mustafa Akkad, I think is maybe how you say
Yeah.
his name. This is I want to say this before I forgot. When I told Max what we were
Mhm.
doing, how we were gonna do a whole Halloween
Mhm.
uh like thing,
Yeah.
he kind of explained to me how most Akkad is kind of like the heart and soul of the franchise in a way, and
Yeah.
how like he
His
was
name is
doing
very prominent in the credits when you watch the movie. Like you always recognize his name.
Yeah.
he was doing research on like, or like developing, not research, but like he was like developing like these films about the Prophet Muhammad, right? And in Islam you can't depict Muhammad, so to like make a movie about Muhammad you have to like, he was looking into like shooting in the first person, and that's where all of these shots from Halloween kind of come from him, like looking into like how would you shoot like a first person point of view while developing these films about
Interesting.
Muhammad. It's a little interesting. He dropped that little knowledge bomb on me a while ago.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
pretty cool.
that kind of I think that's a great. It's kind of one of those like perfect time, perfect place, like people meeting because obviously, Carpenter big fan of the movie Black Christmas to the point of
Hmm.
like him being like asking the director. We talked about this on the Black Christmas episode, but he's like, "What would you do for a Black Christmas sequel?" And he's like, I don't like, I don't want to do a horror movie anymore." And then him kind of pulling from that idea, and like obviously Black Christmas, a lot of POV things. So the combo of those two guys, kind of creating the slasher, how to shoot a slasher 101
Yeah.
with these movies,
Yeah.
because like the POV slasher thing is just it's just how you do it now. It's like that's
Yeah.
just the way it goes. But it kind of really it
They
starts with Black
wrote like
Christmas.
cinematic language,
It
you
starts with
know.
Black Christmas, but it becomes popularized in Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say about Season of the Witch is
Mhm.
that I think I'll like it even more when I rewatch it in the future, specifically because I think I was like almost a little bit misled as to like what it was about. Not because of like I knew it was like a non-Michael Myers movie,
Yeah.
but
There were
like
no
just judging by
witches.
like no, not the witches. It's like when you see it, you see like the banner and it's like the three kids in like their Halloween costumes, and then most of
Yeah.
the movie follows like these two adults, and I thought it would tap more into like the
Sure.
kids being scared of like all this Halloween stuff, and you like it kind of like a Goosebumps thing where you like follow kids around. And
I
so
thought the movie was going to be about three kids that were witches. I'm not even joking.
yeah, no, I thought it was gonna be something like that.
When
I thought it was gonna be like a
when
creepy
that
like something
shot,
that happens to the children.
Like the silhouette.
the silhouette shot, it's
Yeah.
so amazing. That is a transition shot in the
Yeah.
film. It is like oh, it's
Um,
Oh,
so
but no, I think that
yeah.
expectation made me like kind of almost want that movie. And now that I know it's a different movie and it's also a different movie that I like, then
It's like
I can enjoy it
yeah,
in the future. But
it's super cozy.
I
it's so
get
jolly. When they sleep together, I'm like, look at this. These are the guys.
Oh no, I love
Yeah.
them. They're so
yeah.
it's so sweet. And then like the kind of main conflict is like this evil businessman is like killing kids with like TV jingles and like
Right.
masks. It's like
Yeah.
so
What could this movie possibly be about thematically?
it's so oh man. Well, it's very interesting that like a movie about like that is it kind of turned into like a kind of thing where it's like no, we want Michael back. Give us what we want. Like
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
like it's really
Um
interesting, and it kind of I mean, especially you think about what happens now with like studios and the way that they respond to backlash. It's interesting to look back on like a film that came out decades ago that kind of had a similar thing that we see movies have nowadays, and I can't imagine releasing something like this. Like I don't
yeah.
like now.
Right.
Like
Well,
they would never even try to do something like that.
no, at least they recovered from this. Now, like, we're never gonna get the Star Wars movie is never gonna get
Yeah, well,
released
it's like
again now. Like,
if they did something like that, it would just be like the end of Halloween
yeah, no,
now.
literally. If this happened, they just would have never made another Halloween movie
Well, I don't
today.
know. Maybe they
Like,
would have brought Michael back, but I feel like something like stuff like drastically happens like that now, where it's like they just
Yeah.
like give up on the kind of franchise as a whole.
Yeah.
Well, it's also confusing too because it's like you call this Halloween 3 and then Halloween 4 is the return. Then
Right.
it's like it gets really kind of confusing.
But Halloween 4 does do the thing that I was just talking about, which is one of the things I really like,
Mhm.
and it is about a child.
Yeah.
Not like
Well,
entirely about her, but like,
I mean, Jamie's a big part of it.
yeah, and I think my favorite part of the movie is like specifically kind of towards the end where like she's being chased by Michael and it's like
Yeah.
you're just watching like it just feels like you're watching a kid's nightmare, which is like the coolest thing. I think it's like one of the ideas that is like true to all of the movies that this like this movie specifically actually like attempts to convey that I just really like about the movies, which is like that thing I was talking about, like the boogeyman, like you're a kid scared of like this thing that you can't see, like and it turns into this kind of nightmare. And that's why this one is like very clearly one of my favorites. And that's this movie is responsible for the extra number when we were calculating the movies before. And Doug gave me like that puzzled look when I said 4 instead of 3, because I really like
Mhm.
Halloween 4. And I think you could even make a case that it's like the best one. I think it is. I also think it's just the most similar to the original, like in terms of like the vibe and the atmosphere and like the like Halloween season of it all. Like
Mhm.
it just reminds me the most of all of the things that I like about the original. Plus, it adds all that extra stuff about like being a kid chased by a serial killer that I think is super fun.
Yeah.
And then the ending is fucking like one of the coolest scenes in the entire franchise. It's
no,
like the
yeah,
most
the
insane
ending is
shit ever.
really impressive,
Really,
really
really
cool.
awesome ending. I
Yeah, like it's
I
like
think
it's just
a
fun from
notable
front to back.
a notable thing to bring up about this movie is there is no Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah,
And I wanted to do like a quick Google search because I wasn't really sure why. And basically, it comes down to like she was at a point in her career like where she was probably the biggest, and she was like doing really big movies, and she was like, I don't want to do a horror movie anymore. Which I think is interesting when you think about like what happens later on and coming back and kind of just being like the cash cow of the franchise and being like this the face as much as Michael is. But there was a point where she was like, no, I'm kind of too good for this, and I don't really. But Donald Pleasance was like, "Nah, fuck it, I'm going back. I'm ready to go. Let me and Michael, let's do this." And I think I kind of really love, kind of putting Jamie with Donald Pleasance as like that kind of. There's kind of it doesn't really get explored that much, but there's kind of this interesting relationship there. And I think it's a good trio. I think it's a really strong trio, and I mean, they don't really stick with it too long, but I
no,
think the the
and
the
it gets real bad real quick.
I
But
think the Loomis, Jamie, Michael kind of triangle is a really interesting way
yeah,
to take the franchise in another step.
yeah.
And I do like I watched 4 like
This is like a middle of the road one for
I
you,
watched
right?
4 at
For both
Kevin's
of you, I
house.
guess. Yeah,
I think
Owen did watch 4 with me. We watched it together.
yeah, we did watch 4. I think this movie is good. I just I just think there are movies that I like more. That's
Sure.
what it comes down to.
And it's similar for you, Doug.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I like it. I think the ending is good. I think the whole Jamie thing is cool. It's it's tough because it's obviously not as good as Season of the Witch
Mhm.
or the first one, right?
Right.
Eh,
Yeah.
but I think it's really I think it's I think that this maybe it's like the next one, but like I think that we're kind of we enter like just Friday the third like Halloween is just now Friday the 13th now.
Yeah.
Maybe like more so with the next one than this one.
Halloween 5 is. We could even jump into 5 now if we
Well,
want
Okay.
because
I,
this is
w-
not
I
going to be a long
wanted to I just wanted to
conversation. But
mention that Dwight H. Little did direct this film, who directed Free Willy 2, which is very interesting when you think about it now, because I'm trying to think, like, I don't know. I guess like a guy like this, does he really exist now?
he
I'm
also
not
directed
sure.
Anacondas, the sequel to
Yes.
Anaconda.
Well, it's like
Uh,
it's interesting to have like a guy like that, and that they
There
guys
aren't
like this.
studio films like this anymore.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's
Yeah.
a guy who just kind of does this is really interesting, and it's interesting also to look back on it now and be like, oh, the Halloween sequels are just made by like journeyman guys who did like studio sequels. Where I feel like now, I mean, I guess like I think the biggest example, I don't know. I guess David Gordon Green made Halloween movies, and like the Scream. When you look at the Scream movies, they were made by the Radio Silence guys, who like they're horror movie directors though. It's not like they're just like random
yeah.
guys. I don't know.
Well,
It just
but also
it's interesting to look at like something as big as Halloween and be like, Dwight H. Little directed the fourth one. You know,
Yeah.
it feels
Like,
it's like it feels interesting. Like
what's even a
studio.
franchise horror movie that came out this year? Like Alien Romulus?
Smile.
Oh, sure. Smile is made by the same guy. Both
But
of
the
them.
guy that's like a guy who created the thing.
Yeah,
That,
like, but like, I mean, Alien Romulus is what's his name, Fede Alvarez, who's like an
who
established
who
like
is
horror
But Fede
boy.
Alvarez is interesting too because he's like a remake guy now. I guess in a
Sure.
way,
Yeah, sure.
he's become like I'll remake the old movie.
Sure, but
And
he's
Well,
not.
his whole thing
He
is
does
like
not have any similarities to a Dwayne H. Little.
no, I'm not saying
You
he's
know?
no.
Dwight H. Little, and I'm
Yeah.
not saying Dwight H. Little is a
No,
bad
just movies
filmmaker
aren't like this anymore.
because
Yeah.
I think this
Like
is a good
movies just
movie.
aren't like this anymore.
It's
Yeah,
just
this is a good movie.
interesting. It's an interesting like career that
Artifact.
I just
We
don't
don't
think.
get movies with the number 4 in the title anymore.
Yeah, that's a
Straight
big
up.
thing. Yeah.
Straight up, like we just
Um,
don't. That just doesn't
and
happen
and
anymore.
we even get one bigger. We get Halloween 5 next.
Yeah.
The Revenge of Michael Myers, as opposed to the Return.
Yes.
This
This
one
movie
is
sucks.
ass. This one
This
we don't even
movie
need to talk
sucks.
about this one. Really,
So
it's just like it's just
I
bad.
didn't rewatch this one for this because it's not my least favorite, but it is.
It's very close for me. It's second to last for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a flip of the coin. This movie was directed by Dominique Othene. Oh, this guy's he's got a long
Othman.
last name.
Othman Gerard.
We're
Gerard?
gonna go with that. The director of The Omen,
4.
The Awakening. Oh, The Omen. Is that 4?
That's
Omen
a 4. Yeah,
The
that's how you
Awakening.
read Roman
It's an
numerals.
IV, right? Owen,
No.
Roman numeral.
Yeah.
For the
I feel
number
like we
4.
learned this at a very young age, Owen. You're
Which
probably
is
not too far separated from the years of school where you learned about Roman numerals.
which is interesting again when we talk about these careers because it's like another guy whose just job, like for the biggest stuff he's worked on was just like sequels to like popular horror
Yeah.
movies.
But it's just bad straight up. Like, and it's not even
Yeah.
like I don't know. You guys might feel a little bit different about this, but I think like the most egregious thing is that it's just like it's so boring and like so plain. Like they don't characterize a
I
single
don't.
person in it, and like nothing even
What
matters
happens in
it.
this
And like
movie?
I literally couldn't tell you. I don't
Because
remember.
I don't
It's like
remember.
the only thing I remember is that it starts
What
by
happens?
walking back the ending of the fourth movie. Like
Yeah,
that
it opens
awesome
up
ending
with
of the
like
fourth
Michael
movie. It
Myers
just
like
Michael, he's
escaping
like
through
in
a
the
river.
water. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
What
And
happens
then
now?
the ending of the fourth movie just becomes void. So from the beginning, I already don't like the movie because it just changes what was such a like cool, ambitious thing that they did at the end of the fourth one. And then the rest of the movie just like doesn't do anything. It's just like plain and like nothing matters, and the characters don't even feel like characters. Like it's just all like so empty.
Mhm.
I think that this film has pretty terrible mise en scène. It's a lot of just a guy, like literally a lot of the scenes play out like it feels like the cameraman holding the camera running around the house trying to capture like literally like running around in like point of view shots or something, like trying to capture our actors. It's like not really a very not well thought out film, I think,
Yeah.
in my experience of watching it.
Yeah, no, it's
Donald-
an ugly movie.
Yeah, Donald Pleasance does his thing, you know, like he does.
Yeah, but even
He's
he's like
showing
not
up.
even a character in this
Yeah.
movie as well.
He-
Like that's what
he has,
this
like,
is kind of the movie that I was referencing where I was like, he's gonna be interesting in every movie regardless, but like sometimes his character is
He's
not his
doing what
character,
he's
and
doing as much as he
in
can.
this
Yeah.
By
movie, he's
this
really
one,
not his
he probably
character.
has like enough authority over his character to like be able to
Yeah.
write his own lines, I think,
Yeah.
probably. Because
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I mean,
Yeah, no, this one's just a mess. We don't really need to talk about it that much. The next one is Halloween: The Curse
The
of Michael
Curse of
Myers,
Michael
which comes
Myers.
out in 95. This is the 6th movie in the
Yes.
franchise.
it is notable to say that we all watched the producer's cut of this film.
Yes.
Yes.
There was
Uh,
another cut of this film that people say is bad, I guess. I think this movie's good.
Many
Yeah,
people would probably also
I
call the producer's cut bad, but
so yeah, this is a
um,
2.0 on Letterboxd.
yeah.
This is one of my favorites of the franchise. I remember when I first watched this, like just running through them, I was like really interested in this one. It has a lot of like kind of cult, like it's about a cult thing. There's a
It
cult
should have been
storyline.
called The Cult of Michael Myers instead of The
Yeah, the
Curse of
curse
Michael
is
Myers.
weird because
It should have been
again,
called The
again
Cult
with these titles, they are just not describing what the movie is.
I mean, he is cursed. There's like a
No,
cursed
sure,
thing.
but it's like,
The
but
Cult
Yeah,
of
I
Michael
know.
Myers is
the
also
name was
like a
right
better
there. It was
name.
so,
Yeah, sure.
and it's like you can't even miss it because the words are so similar that somebody had to
Yeah.
have like had the title "The Curse of Michael Myers,"
Yeah.
have seen the final cut of the movie, and been like, "That kind of sounds like the cult of Michael
Well,
Myers
yeah.
too." Like, don't
When
you
you
think we
look
should
at
maybe
the
consider?
letterbox description, it says 6 years after being kidnapped by a cult, Jamie, so it's
Yeah,
a
it's
part of the
like
movie.
all
So
about yeah.
I really like this one a lot. The opening, it's like this movie's super blue. It opens, Jamie is like
That was
in
the
this
fourth one
fucking
worth mentioning. Just to go back, the fourth movie is also
really
blue as fuck.
really blue. It really awesome. All of like the fucking devil like shit, like
Yeah.
what cult stuff, I think is really awesome, and I wish that just became like a bigger part of the franchise. Like because they do the thing where it's like, oh, people don't like this movie, we're gonna stop doing that. But I think Michael Myers being tied into like culty like satanic stuff, I think is really cool. And
Mhm.
I wish that was like a bigger part of just these movies in general. And that's why like I think this movie really stands out to me is like that's like a really strong idea. This movie also has super young, clueless actor Paul Rudd in it playing
Yeah.
Tommy
Came out the
Doyle.
same
Yeah.
year as Clueless, I
Yep.
believe.
So I mean, Tommy Doyle it was a character in the original movie,
In
and
the original,
he's a
yeah.
character
He's
that
also in the
is
new ones.
so yeah. Well, that is an interesting thing to bring up, and I think it's really weird. But so Tommy Doyle was a kid who's getting babysit the night of Halloween, and then it becomes in this movie, and he's Paul Rudd, and it's very interesting. Like weird stuff going on. The plot kind of goes all over the place, but I think as like a movie, it's like really fun, and there's like a
Yeah.
lot of interesting ideas. I think in terms of like coming off of the last movie, it's such a major improvement, and I think it's a movie that like sets the franchise in an interesting direction. Does it really take that direction, or does it
It
really want to?
immediately abandons that
Like,
direction,
exactly. So it
actually.
like I think it's like a really great movie that I would like to see them like stick with it, but with the whole like the way that
It's
franchises
kind
the
of
fra-
it's
the way that
like
franchises work, and it doesn't really,
these movies, a lot of them, this is like a clear example of it when you
Yeah.
say like that it could go in an interesting direction, is that a lot of these movies are like doing something different,
Mhm.
and then that different thing never gets expanded upon because people did not like it. And
Yeah.
so
So they
almost like half of these movies work better as just like movies on their own than they do in like
yeah.
addition to the previous movies. Like it's like a lot of these are just movies you watch by themselves,
This is
Yeah.
my
and you
note.
just don't watch it out of order, or like you can watch it out of order. I mean, like that's just like just watch whatever because they almost like
Yeah.
most of the time they don't matter.
This is
Like,
my kind of like one of my takeaways for Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers is that
Mhm.
they drop the number for this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good decision because I think this movie is probably best experienced if you have not seen
Yeah.
the previous ones and you're not comparing it to like a movie
Yeah.
directed by John Carpenter.
It
Because
almost
like
is like again, but like what we were saying before, it's like almost all of these movies have such negative ratings because the reaction to them was comparing them to other ones instead of just like watching them as movies on their own. And I hate to like do the whole, shut your brain off or whatever thing, but it's like this movie is best experienced if you just don't think too hard about all the cult stuff that like makes it a mess. Like I listen, I think the cult stuff's kind of fun. A lot of it does not make sense.
I love a
And it
cult.
and it
That shit
like
doesn't matter, bro.
yeah,
Like,
Yeah,
and it
I
doesn't
mean, I
really
don't.
need to.
If you're gonna get like cinema sins plotty on the movie, then like whatever.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But it's like if you just like overlook that entirely and like you just don't
Yeah,
think too hard about
but
it, it has so many fun moments that it's just like you're gonna have a good time, I
so
feel like.
this movie is the end of a timeline, and I think
Yes.
that's important to bring up. So you have Halloween 1, you have Halloween 2, then they have the anthology movie, which is in a separate timeline. Then you have
Yes,
Halloween
just by
4,
itself.
Halloween 5, and then you have Halloween 6,
Yeah.
which you would assume they kind of like, the way the end movie ends, you would be like, okay, there's going to be more to what's going on here. But the movie was received really badly, so then that is the end of all this, and we kind of go
Yeah. That's
further.
like the end of like the main timeline, like in relation to the first
Yes,
movie, and now we kind of go in a bunch of different directions multiple
because
times over.
Halloween 2, not Halloween 2, Halloween 2, H2O, 20 years later, Halloween. This movie is a direct sequel to Halloween 2. So it is
Yes.
just saying, hey, Halloween 4, Halloween 3, Halloween 5, Curse of Michael Myers. That shit doesn't exist. That never happened.
Yeah.
None of that ever happened. Oh, you remember our old pal Jamie Lee Curtis?
Yeah.
We said she was dead. She said she was too good for horror movies. Well, she's back in this new movie H2O, and
Yeah.
that's what we're gonna sell you here.
Yeah. And it also comes out immediately
In
after
1998.
Scream. 2 years after Scream
Mhm.
is like a massive success.
Well, yeah,
And
Scream that came out in
there
96.
is a wave of tons of horror movies that try to be Scream to this day. To be fair, Scream has a lasting impact. Especially, I think Scream is like
Yeah.
the movie you could reference the most when it comes to like what modern horror movies try to
Oh,
do.
yeah.
But like obviously the immediate years, like the late 90s, early 2000s, there are just like a lot of people trying to make Scream movies. And this movie is kind of Halloween's attempt at getting that same Scream success. Um, which like when I talk about it, I'm kind of just like, I would not like this as a Scream movie. Like if this was a Scream movie, it would be a bad Scream movie. But as a Halloween
Okay.
movie, I think it's like a fun thing to exist. Like I think it's like a fun little thing to have. Because it's just like silly and like really watchable for me. Because it just goes by so fast and like and everything is just like it just kind of like starts and ends like it's just like it's also quick
Mhm.
and like there's like fun little character like I think LL Cool J's in this one. Like
LL Cool J is
he's the
awesome in
best
this
part of the movie.
movie.
Like he's so awesome in
he's
this movie.
fun.
I was like,
Yeah,
I could
he's
watch a
cool.
whole movie about his character.
He's
Like
like an
it's so
erotic novelist, right?
yeah, he's like
Yeah.
writing an erotic novel and he gets phone calls from his wife all
And
day
he's like
talking
reading.
about how like when this novel blows up then
Awesome
like their
character.
life is gonna
Awesome
change.
character. He's
It's
so
like he's
great.
like low key like he's probably
Um,
my favorite character in these movies that is not like the main,
yeah, this
like
movie,
in terms of supporting characters, he's probably my favorite. Like he's
yeah.
just so fun.
You talk about Scream. This movie opens up like a Scream movie. You have
Yeah.
like an opening kill, and the opening kill is Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who's like
Yes.
really
Was that
young.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
Yes, yes,
It
yes.
Okay.
is, yeah.
Okay, okay.
I'm
Joseph
surprised you
Gordon-Levitt.
didn't know it was Joseph
No,
He,
no, I
Gordon-Levitt.
thought it was
he
when I was watching it, and then I kept
yeah.
watching, and I was like, "Oh no, that's not him." Like,
No,
Yeah.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt gets like a fucking skate to the skull by Michael
Yeah.
Myers in like a very like Scream style. We're killing off someone in the first
In the
10
beginning,
minutes.
yeah, to like set up the movie.
Yeah, I know Doug doesn't like this one, but I do like this movie. I think it's really fun, and as someone who is like a big Scream fan, I think this is fun. I also just kind of like a lot of. I think it's very 90s, and I like where we are in the whole it's a it's kind of like a high school movie in like a
Yeah.
in a 90s horror movie way. Josh Hartnett's here.
Yeah.
I think the idea and the there's an interesting kind of, you can compare this movie to the David Gordon Green stuff as like a way, because they're kind of very similar in the way they're like they don't do it exactly the same, but they're the way that like ignore some of these sequels, and it's going to be like a kind of um, Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode reaction to the first movie. And I think in terms of like Laurie Strode is now a teacher at this school, and it's about like the school, and her son goes here. And I like this little town, and it's very cute. It's not like the best one,
Yeah.
but I there's a lot I do like. Michelle Williams is here. I
Michelle
also
Williams, yeah.
I do like when we talk about Halloween 3 and the original movie. I think this movie again has really strong, very obvious, but really strong ties to Psycho, which is good to bring up with Jamie Lee Curtis being the daughter of Janet Leigh, and Janet Leigh's in this movie, and she like has the car from Psycho, and like they do the little music cue,
Yeah.
and like they like do like it's very like Scream references to Psycho, and as like a really big fan of like the both Scream and Psycho, I think that kind of makes me really like this movie. It's just like a weird like horror item that is really pulling from both of those things, as well just of being like a fun teen horror movie.
This
Yeah.
movie is bad. I'm sorry, this movie's bad. I don't know, guys. It's like I guess the Scream comparisons, I see them. They did not. They I don't know. Maybe it's part of it is because I don't like Scream as much as you guys. Like that
Yeah.
movie doesn't exist in a
Well,
as
you've only seen like the first one, right?
I've only seen the first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
actually
it's
feel like I
good.
did not know that. I thought Doug just liked all of them.
I've only seen the first one. I think I'd like all of them. I like the first one a lot. That's a great movie. Great.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Wes Craven, one of our great fucking cinema directors.
Yeah.
But this, but H2O, this really, I think it's a clever title. H2O Halloween 20 years. It's making a whole big
I
deal
think
out of
it's
it.
kind of dumb. I honestly
No, it
did,
is dumb.
because
It
it's
is
like
dumb. But
this
like,
has nothing to do with water.
Yeah.
right.
But maybe that was the joke, is like after
Yeah.
they named 2 movies wrong, they were just like, what if we just put this in there?
Uh,
Like, what if the person naming all these movies
This
is
is
just
like,
fucking with
well,
people?
I think like because I was talking to my mom about this earlier, and I was trying to like I just brought up H2O, and I was like, out of all the Halloween movies, this is like the hardest to like explain just off the title, like off rip, because it's like calling it like go Halloween 1, Halloween 2, and then just like H2O. It's like
Like he comes out of the water.
yeah,
he's
it's like what the fuck.
Michael Myers have been living in the ocean.
But yeah, I don't know. It's like a silly like a Halloween 2020 later. I think it's fun.
A nostalgia thing, and I'm like, I hate
Yeah.
nostalgia.
It is.
I hate
but
nostalgia. I don't give a fuck about Jamie Lee Curtis's character from the first Halloween. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
And it's like the movie doesn't do anything. It's like oh,
Sure,
she's
I don't
upset,
know.
and it's like
You know what it
okay,
does
yeah,
have?
she's,
Wait,
like,
there's more than one. I think there's 2 movies that this happens in, but I'm almost confident it definitely happens in this one. I don't know which one the other one is,
Yeah.
but I was saying this when we were watching. I forget where it is. I watch a lot of these movies with my girlfriend because I forced her to watch them because I had to, and
Yeah.
so
At
like at some
gunpoint?
point, no, not at gunpoint, but
Oh, okay.
but
Drop a gun in the chat.
But I remember saying to her at some point along the journey, like closer to the end, I was like, I miss that section where there's like 2 movies where Michael Myers would just like be able to crawl on the ceiling and like come down from the ceiling. It's just like in this movie
No,
randomly
yeah,
where
That
he
was so
hides
stupid.
and then he like hangs onto the ceiling with one
And
arm.
He
he's
does
like,
that in the
yes,
next
it's-
movie too. He does that in
so-
the next movie
No,
too.
I kind of that shit rocks. That shit
No, that
rocks.
shit's fucking
I
dumb.
think it's
That
so
shit's so
funny that's like a
dumb.
thing that he could do.
Oh, it's so awesome.
And I was
No,
like, why
it's
did we?
not
I was like,
awesome.
why is that not an established part of like the Michael Myers lore that he just like comes down from
Yes.
ceilings to kill people? I
Well,
thought
he's
that's
like
so
in this
silly.
movie, he becomes like a tactical fucking
Yes.
killer.
Yeah.
He's
I
like he's
think
putting
it's
Well-
so much
silly.
thought into his game here.
I think
Um,
in terms of like, hey, we haven't seen this version of Michael Myers in 20 years. I think it's fair to say that he is like evolved in some ways. You
Yeah.
mentioned it earlier, but
He's been in
this
the
is-
lab, dude. He's
Yeah,
been
he's
practicing
been
his
cooking.
jumper for 2 decades.
Doug mentioned this earlier, but this is a movie where his mask is like $5.
Yeah, what the
Yeah.
fuck is
There's a
yeah, this is
couple
what I
there's
want
a
to
couple
reference.
of them where the mask is just like not a
No,
mask.
in this one
It's like, how did-
specifically, he looks
Like his
stupid.
like
Michael
his
Myers looks
like
fucking dumb in this movie. His like the
Yeah.
eyeballs are way too big.
well,
Like
Yeah. It's
maybe
weird. How did they even make the masks look so different movie by movie? Couldn't they
like
just
what
get
the
the
fuck?
same mask every time?
yeah.
Really,
It,
that
Well,
part
no, I
really
mean there's
confused.
different actors and stuff, and
Oh,
it's like
sure,
they're
but
not
it's
keeping
like
the
you can still
yeah.
model the new actor's
no, I
mask
know.
like closely to the other. It's
It's
like
like I'm sure at the time you could have gone to like a store and got a better mask. Like,
No, it's like it looks bad. Like it like fits bad, and
they
it, like the eye
just
holes are
like
too big.
it's
It
like
looks
on the
fucking
first day of
stupid.
filming, they see the mask and they just like ask if they're like, "Can you just like run to the Halloween store and
no,
get
well, no,
a Michael Myers mask?"
it's like a new guy, and he's like, I can't see shit in here, so they like cut bigger eye holes in his fucking thing.
No,
Um,
it looks
yeah,
really
I
bad.
don't know.
Yeah,
I
I guess I
but
just
like
like never really cared that much about how the
that
mask
part,
looks, except for when it looks cool. Like
I
when it looks
think,
good, I like it, and when it looks bad, I just don't pay attention to
Well,
it.
that
yeah,
I'm the opposite. When it looks like how I imagine it's supposed to, I don't pay attention. But when it looks like bad, I'm like, damn, why does it look so? It's distracting. Like, why does it look
Yeah.
so bad?
I don't think there's a movie where it like the mask doesn't kind of fit the kind of vibe for the movie for me because where this movie is like it's super silly, like it's very like referencey nostalgia movie. So I think the fact that he just looks dumb is like okay, it's like it's just silly. It's like it kind of goes along with the silliness of the movie, so it doesn't really bother me. But it is like definitely an element, and it's kind of like one of those like you just look like search like Halloween and you go like threads or whatever of like people talking
Yeah.
about the movies. This is like kind of like a meme of the Halloween stuff. Is like his kind of really bad mask. Uh,
This Halloween H2O,
Mhm.
this movie functions on or only exists. It is only able to exist on the idea that like there is some like final showdown redemption that needs to happen between the Jamie Lee Curtis character, Laurie Strode, and Michael Myers, right? Which I
yeah,
am just kind of fundamentally like, no, there isn't, right?
but
And then there's the tape all of the David Gordon Green
well,
movies exist on the same fucking
that's what I was
assumption.
about to say. Is it kind of that's what was saying earlier. It's like there becomes a point where every movie with Jamie Lee Curtis is like the same movie because it's
Yeah.
like Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode is like freaking the fuck out and has like trauma and she's like losing her mind because she's like waiting for Michael Myers to come back. And then it's all about like when Michael Myers comes back, like she has to like face him and like defeat him. And like they have to defeat him now. And they do that like 6 times. Like that exact like plot of the movie is like done like 6 times where it's like Laurie Strode is like freaking the fuck out and like she's ruining everyone around her's life because she's like Michael's gonna come and get me any day now. But I think
Yeah.
it's maybe the funniest in this movie because she's been waiting for 20 years and like fucking what's his name? Her son, Josh Hartnett is like it's been 20 years. Like he's not fucking coming. Like this,
Yeah.
you're fucking freaking out. But I don't know. It's kind of really ridiculous. And when you get to like the 7th movie in a franchise, I'm kind of just here to have a good time. And I think this movie's really like Kevin said, it has that Halloween like coziness to it. And it's I don't know. It's quick. It's fun. It's incredibly watchable. Not my favorite of the franchise, but I think in terms of like the movies I like and will go back to, I think it kind of belongs in there.
Yeah. Um, I I got so distracted.
Yeah, what's going on?
You guys just I'll break the news on the pod, dude. You guys
What?
just missed the craziest play of football that we're gonna get all year, dude. Fucking
Whoa.
Caleb Williams versus Jaden Daniels fucking showdown. He Commanders 0 seconds left. A fucking 70-yard bomb, Hail Mary,
I'm
but to
watching it
win
right
the
now.
game for the Commanders, dude. Fucking bounces off a receiver's hands, pops it into the back of the end zone, and Brown is just waiting there to catch it and win the game. Uh, insane,
Oh
um,
wow.
crazy,
De'Ami Brown, UNC,
dude,
North Carolina Tar Heels.
insane. I was just like
Shout
listening to
out.
you. I was listening to you talk about Halloween, and I just watched that happen on my TV, and I like could not act normal about it. That was nuts. Um. Anyway, uh, the next movie we like kind of don't have to talk about
We
Halloween
we got to
Resurrection.
talk
We have
about
to talk
this.
No, no,
about
we could
this.
talk
gotta
about it a little
this.
bit, but I meant like similar to Halloween
We need
5.
to talk about Kevin.
Sure.
So this is another one I didn't watch because I think this is probably the worst one.
It is, yeah.
Are we gonna get to agreement on that here?
There's
Yeah, I mean,
no
Doug
way
hated
there's
this
no-
more than I
Is
hate
this-
AI.
Is this the?
We can't keep. Why does
Which
this keep
that
getting
is
brought
crazy.
Up? Why does
Which
this
is
keep
that
getting
is
brought
because
up?
you were the only person to not give that movie half star, and then you were like, you know what, this Halloween movie is half star.
Yeah, you should have just not rated it, I think, is the point. Like, if you were just like, if you watched I Hate AI and you were like, well, there's something redeeming here, you probably should have just like
You should have
left it
kept that to
unrated.
yourself.
Why
And
are
now
we
it's
doing
you
like
probably should've just
Doug
left
like
it
rating
unrated.
discourse on the pod?
No,
where it's like,
because
No, no,
I
no.
think
I
great
don't
movies.
care. I'm like laughing
I
at
just
it
think it's
because other
funny.
people like saw that rating and like made
I
fun
just
of me
think it's
for it.
funny. I just think it's funny that you gave that AI movie 1 star.
Yeah.
It's not a movie. It's a commercial. It's not even.
Yeah.
It
Wait,
shouldn't be on
exactly.
Letterboxd.
Exactly.
It
It's
It's
wasn't
not a
even
not.
movie.
the
They
yeah.
took it off Letterbox. It's not on Letterbox anymore.
Yeah,
Oh, is it
'cause
really
it's
not?
it's a Facebook commercial. Why would it be
Damn,
on
I had like the
Letterboxd?
top review for that one.
But that's why I think it's funny that you were like, and obviously that's not how ratings work, whatever. But I do think it is funny that in like the span of like a week or two, you were like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna 1 star. This is not a half star, and then you gave this movie a half star. And this movie's bad. This movie's really bad. I think it is funny that was a thing that happened. In
Halloween Resurrection is the worst fucking shit. This shit is so stupid. This shit doesn't make any fucking sense. This is idiotic. It's like it's like a parody of it's like a scary movie. It's it's like it's so
Yeah.
bad.
Well, that's where it becomes. It's like, is this Scream or is this Scary Movie? And there was a thing that happens when the movie gets really. This movie has Busta Rhymes and he's third billed.
Yeah. And he's the
Yeah.
he's the
And
only thing I like about
he's
the
the best
movie.
part. 1 star for Busta Rhymes.
Yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis is first billed for some reason.
Yeah. Not
Well,
in the movie.
Yeah, because she isn't in a insane
Well, she's
asylum
in the
and she-
movie, but not.
No,
yeah.
Like the first, like,
scene
10
that
minutes
the scene
or,
that she's
like-
in is so fucking bad.
Yeah.
It is like actually
all
no, it's
I
like,
remember
It's
that.
literally a scary movie bit. The first scene that she is in is literally a fucking scary movie bit. It is so ridiculous. She kills her. She stabs herself. She literally stabs herself in the back
Yeah.
with a butcher's knife.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
It's so pointless. This is what I don't want to talk about the movie because it's like there's nothing.
Yeah,
Like it's
I
just,
so
it's
I
just
I
dumb.
didn't
Like
watch.
it's just like the concept is fucking ridiculous.
Isn't it
It's
like
stupid.
iCarly?
Sure. I feel like you're only saying that because you were born after reality television existed. That like your point of comparison for this
but it's
movie
not
is
on
iCarly.
TV. It's
and
like
not-
no, it is like iCarly.
but it's like
Sure,
iCarly,
it's
like
a web show, but
it's
it's
a
like a
web
web
show.
show that very clearly is like
It's more like that
modeled
Sam
after-
Hyde show. You know what I'm talking about? The Fishbowl show that Sam Hyde did.
Sure.
No,
Okay, my bad. Never mind.
I
Yeah,
don't.
I don't.
know
Okay.
that.
No. The point I'm
Get
making
this
is
guy
that
out of here.
it's just funny to be like it's like iCarly. I guess because it's a web show, I get that, but it's like it's
I mean,
obviously.
I
like,
haven't seen this movie in
reality
a
TV.
year or two, so
Um,
I just remember. I remember, she falls out of like the insane asylum, and Busta Rhymes is in it, and he's like, it's like iCarly, and there's like,
yeah,
found
and Busta
footage.
Rhymes has this kind of like
Some found
moment
footage
where he
stuff?
yeah
It's like-
he has like the moment where he realizes that like what he's doing is like wrong actually, and like and
Busta
now
Rhymes
it's
is really into kung fu
now-
films.
yeah, he's really
in
into
this
kung
film.
fu.
Oh,
He's really
hell yeah.
established,
I
and
knew
Does
that.
he like?
the payoff from that
No, he, like,
established
roundhouse
is
kicks
that he
Michael
roundhouse kicks
Myers,
Michael
yeah.
Myers at the end because he likes kung fu movies.
That's
like
kind
the
of
payoff
awesome,
of setting up that he likes kung fu.
guys.
You would think it's kind of
what if
awesome.
this
Honestly,
movie's good?
There's a scene where what's the actor?
What if this movie's awesome?
No.
it's
Do you
not.
you ever have like that thing? I don't know how much this happens to you, but that's actually a great example of it where like describing a movie makes it sound a million times better than the
Yeah.
actual movie
Yeah.
is. It's like describing Busta Rhymes
Yeah,
like roundhouse kicking Michael Myers sounds so much cooler. than
sounds
what
like
the
an
actual
SNL
movie
bit.
is.
No, this shit is scary movie. It's literally scary movie. There's a scene where Tyra Banks tells one of the cameramen, she's like, hey, you need to pick an angle, and then she immediately turns around, right, and you could see the monitor behind her. Michael Myers walks in, kills the guy with the camera, sets the camera down, then drags that guy off camera, and the fucking millisecond that the guy's off camera, Tyra Banks turns back around, looks at it, and goes like, "Oh my god, that's a great angle. Good job." And it's like it's so fucking stupid. It's so
Yeah.
dumb. And like the whole movie's about this guy who is like dating the one of the like the girl that's in the web show.
No, I literally was watching it and I was
Like-
like, this is American Pie if it was a horror movie.
Well, that's
I was like, they're doing American Pie. It's like a guy watching like these people
Yeah.
that, like, it's like, why is this American Pie?
we kind of, I mean, we talk about H2O being like the 90s thing, and this is like it's coming into that like early 2000s horror movie, like bad horror movie thing, where it is very like a product of its time.
Yeah.
I one of the worst relics of the 2000s.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this movie kind of killed my spirit a little bit because I was going to rewatch one of them right after this last night, but I was like, I can't do it. um, this the shit there's a and they're like, oh my god, there's another thing. So it's on this kid is at this house party watching this web show. He has it pulled up,
Yeah.
and like there's a big crowd because he's like, oh, it's entertaining, right? And everybody gets sucked into it, and people are dying on the show. Like Michael Myers is
Yeah.
there actually killing people, and he's like, oh my god. Well, and like they're like, how did they do that effect? And he's like, that was real. That was a real effect. And the people are like, no, it's not. And it's like, yeah, dude. Like if you were one of the people, there's no reason I think that was real. If you're watching the show, it's like, you fucking idiot. Like, what do you mean? Like, oh no, that was 100% real. And he calls the police, and it's like, you fucking dumb. Anyway, I don't know. This movie's it's dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
Um.
bad movie.
So that was an end of that timeline, which
Yeah, they just made a 2-movie little timeline.
which just includes, so it's Halloween, Halloween 2, and then it skips to H2O, and then in this movie, and then we don't get a Halloween movie for a couple of years, and we get into the Rob Zombie like duology remake stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, total remake.
Because
of
it's almost the
Halloween.
only way you could
Yeah.
even like revive a franchise
Yeah.
after how bad Resurrection is like just fucking start over because there's
Mhm.
nowhere to go from Resurrection that like would be meaningful.
No, I mean it makes. I mean, also we're like, you know, one fucking 9 movies deep.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it makes sense.
Uh,
It makes sense.
I really like the first Rob Zombie Halloween movie. I know that like we're gonna talk about the second one, which gets talked about a whole lot. But
Mhm.
like this first one is also one of my favorite Halloween movies.
Yeah.
I think it is like without a doubt. Like I mean, it's not even close. This is the only movie in the franchise I think that is like genuinely scary. Like watching it, I'm like actually uncomfortable because the whole first half of the movie is that kind of like look into a serial killer type of thing, and it makes it so like it's so unsettling. It's like I can't think of I was thinking of a movie that I could compare it to when I was watching it, and now I forgot what that movie was, but it is like it's like unsettling in that way where it's like you're watching like a real life like serial killer like be born, and then because you watch that first 45 minutes, it makes the stuff later like so much scarier because you like understand him as this like human serial killer as opposed to like what he is in all of the movies before this. It's like you learn so much about him that it makes like the killings later so like fucked up. Like it's like you're watching it just feels like too real. Like it feels like you're
Yeah.
watching like a real serial killer. So it like yeah, it creeps the fuck out of me. Like it's the only one that like really when I was watching it, I was like having an actual reaction where I was like, dude, I'm just like uncomfortable. Like it's like going on for so
Yeah.
long and it's so violent and there's so much like involved in the character that just like makes you like creeped out. I was like, I really you know,
It's
I like it a lot.
it's honestly probably why it's like lower on my list, because this is probably the hardest one to watch just for that
Yeah.
reason.
No, it's just
And
like
it's
dark.
like it's not like it's more like a me thing than like the film itself. But that's why it's like not as high. But I do really like this one. I think it's a really strong film. I think so. You have it's like yeah, they're basically the second half of the movie is like they're redoing
Yeah, they
the
pretty much
original
just make
Halloween,
the first movie, but like a little bit shorter.
and then the first half is like the kind of like it's
The
like a
backstory of
prequel. It's
like
basically a
Myers.
prequel
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
to
I
the
think is the
film.
most interesting. One of the most interesting decisions Mr. Zombie makes in this
Mr.
remake is that
Zombie.
he firmly repositions the film on Michael. It's a
Yeah.
film about Michael instead of a film
Yeah.
about Laurie.
Yeah.
So much more a film about they share more of the
Yeah,
story.
because the first
here.
movie has like you learn about Michael in 3 minutes before the movie starts, and this movie you learn about him in 45 minutes before the movie starts.
Yeah. I think it almost like even though like the other movies have not like this is totally like new and separate. I think it makes the other movies better. Just like having like you just create such a stronger relationship to the idea of Michael
Yeah, that it
Myers.
like makes you think about Michael differently in other
Mhm. Even
movies.
he can have the stupid fucking $5 mask, and he still has that kind of. It's just Michael becomes kind of this one character because like anyone can kind of play Michael. He has all different kind of like shapes and sizes throughout the thing. It's just kind of the presence in the mask, and you kind of it becomes more of like an idea than a person. So I think this movie adds so much to just the franchise as a whole. um, it's not. I don't know what else to really say about it more. I think Rob Zombie is a really interesting filmmaker, and it's like such a strong choice for this remake, and it's like a striking one where it's like I think you could easily have picked someone like they did later, like David Gordon Green, who's just going to kind of give you a more by the numbers film that could be more profitable.
Do
Whereas
we
like
know how this remake came about? Was it that he was selected, or was it that Rob Zombie like pitched
yeah,
this
I'm not
remake as an
sure
idea
because
that he wanted to do?
I'm yeah, let's we can look into it, but it's very it's like to be like, oh, Rob Zombie, let's do it. It's not like a very profitable idea. But I think that's why it's very interesting. A lot of people kind of gravitate towards these two ones because it's such a strong like individual effort in terms of like
Yeah.
and when you think about like a horror remake, it's up there with like the very strong uh ones.
But what I will say is I think what I've noticed is that a lot of people have like mixed reactions about this one where like their reaction to it is usually that it's just kind of like average or like just like sort of good or like sort of bad and like it almost seems like every single person's reading of it is just like I either really like the 45-minute backstory section or I really like Rob Zombie's take on like remaking the first movie, but I don't like both of them as a whole movie. Like they're always like it feels too long and it's like it's doing too much. And I'm just
Yeah.
like and then like my experience watching it was like entirely the opposite where I actually think that both of them make each other better. Like it's like I think that the like I was saying, I think that the part where he's just remaking the original is is so like effective because of the backstory and then people are like oh I don't like this because what like it's just a shorter version of the front like it cuts the tension and it cuts like a lot of like the stuff that Carpenter does so well and I'm like yeah but as a different movie it's interesting because to me like what makes it so scary is that like not only does the backstory make him feel like a real serial killer but like the fact that it's all sped up like and so violent and then the violent is so immediate because of how like like the immediacy of the violence is what makes it scary because the like in a normal situation like serial killer breaks into your home it's not all like peek behind this door and like see what's it's like a serial killer would just break into your home and just fucking stab you right away and kill you
Yeah.
and so like all of it being like sped up and happening quicker in this movie like adds to that for me where I'm like I get that like it doesn't have the kind of like creeping tension of the original but it has its own thing that is like equally scary because it's just like so like thrust upon you like there's almost no time to react like you're just dead and I yeah I don't know I guess that makes me really like both parts of it as opposed to just like favoring one or the other.
This movie is probably a more interesting, like quote unquote, exploration into the mind of a serial killer than most films about real life serial
Yeah.
killers are. Uh, I would say.
No, kind of without a doubt. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think because that's what I'm saying. Because it almost like you just think you're watching a real serial killer. Like the stuff at the beginning, you're just like, yeah, all of this makes sense. And not only does it make sense, but it's like obviously like some of the stuff is very like modeled after what we know to be true about serial killers, like the relationships of the parents and like and the bullies and all of that. So it's like, I don't know, it's all very believable. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
And then we go into
Halloween
Halloween
2 in
2, which came out,
2009.
Yeah.
yes, Halloween 2, 2009, which, you know, a lot of people hate this movie. But there is something to be said. Some people, there's a strong argument to be made that this is one of like the singular text of PTSD filmmaking. In
Yeah.
terms of like how it
Yeah.
explores somebody with post-traumatic stress disorder and somebody with, it really really gets into the nitty-gritty of what it's like to be
Yeah.
a victim, you know,
Yeah.
like this.
And I think it's interesting as like an artifact because like now all horror movies that come out have to be about trauma. Like it's like
Mhm.
everything that comes out now is like the highbrow horror where it's like there has to be more here. And
Yeah.
like none of them do it as well as this one
No.
does. Like it's like this one gets the feeling so much more. And I was talking about like, you know, atmosphere before with like the early movies and stuff and like the feel, but like this movie, like you like feel it. Like you like feel the weight of the trauma in like every single scene.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting just thinking about like kind of what I was talking about earlier with the other movies with Jamie Curtis's Laurie Strode and her kind of always being like, "Oh, Michael's coming for me," like and having this like weird interaction. And this is kind of the movie where it does that sort of like trauma, like waiting for him at every turn thing, just like 100 times better. Um, I don't know. It's so much that kind of I'm like you were kind of talking about how like you think that the whole first movie is like good and some people are like I prefer one of the other halves. I think for me it's like I don't think the second half is bad, but I definitely prefer the first half rather than like the remakey part. But I think a lot of that has to do with like my lack of like investment with the Laurie Strode in this film, and I think they like what all the stuff they did do in the second movie, like her like the second she becomes like this kind of trauma, there's like all the trauma and the PTSD stuff, she becomes like way more interesting of a character. And I think it's very interesting because it's like you're remaking it and you're doing just kind of Laurie Strode as she is in the original movie. And then like the second movie, it's like you're giving her like an actual character. You're making her into an actual character. She immediately becomes more interesting, and the movie immediately becomes more interesting because of that. There's also like just like the coolest imagery of like any horror movies ever in this movie.
Yeah,
Like
incredible symbolism.
it's
Yeah.
beautiful. I love I was just kind of doing a little reading and I love the idea because I remember we were watching Halloween 4, I think, right? We watched Halloween 4 at your
Yeah.
house. And there was a scene where it's like, how is Michael gonna get to X, Y, and Z? And he just like steals the car. And
Yeah.
I was just reading in like the Wikipedia of the first Halloween Rob Zombie one about like Rob Zombie being like, no, Michael is not gonna drive in these movies. Like that's silly. Like this, like, he's not gonna do that. And there was an element
Yeah.
of like this like wandering Michael Myers, and there's a lot of him just kind of like walking around and like just kind of wandering, and and because there's some gap in between these two movies, and I really like this kind of like he's got like his hoodie, his hair is really long. Tyler Mane plays him. He's like
He's
ridiculously
fucking six
big.
foot nine.
He's he's like fucking
He's
Like
NBA.
actually
scary. He's
no, like
No,
actually
scary.
6'9",
well,
though.
that's
Like it's just how tall he is. Like,
I love the kind of gigantic like NBA big man, but the hair is like in his way,
yeah.
and then he's got like the hoodie on, and he's just like kind
Oh,
of
because he's like a pro wrestler, right?
wandering the streets. I
Yeah.
really love that kind of vibe to Michael. He's when you add all the like traumatic backstory with like the very violent kind of elements to the film, and then he's very scary without the mask, like just as like a human standing there. There's a lot of like really interesting elements that they just do with kind of the framing and the character of Michael himself. Uh, fair, I don't know, it's super fascinating film. It's kind of it feels like an impossible film that fits like to fit
Yeah.
in like a franchise like this. Like this doesn't exist in like any other horror franchise like this.
It's also
Which
just like so fucking sad, dude. Like
oh yeah,
I just like started crying during it, and I was like, I did not think that, you know, on the 10th movie of my Halloween binge, I would just start like
yeah,
ugly
yeah, yeah.
crying. But then like there's, you know, the scene where Jamie's like in the not Jamie, fucking Annie, Brackett is like in the bathroom and like you know, like Laurie finds her and then her dad finds her. And I'm just like, dude, this is like so
Oh
bleak.
yeah, that I
And it's
mean
like
that's
so hard to watch. And it's like
because
again,
she gets
it
like
like does
fucked
all
up.
of yeah, but it does like all of the things that I like about the first movie, and then just like with like in terms of like the violence and like
Mhm,
and all of that, and then just makes it like the saddest fucking horror movie I've ever seen, and I'm just like so emotionally invested in it.
mhm.
And it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's just it's like a miracle of a movie. It's like weird that it exists because I just like the movies that I would compare it to are just like not horror movies in terms of like my emotional reaction. Like it's like I'm almost like, you know, the movie ends and I'm thinking more about like the way I felt after watching After Sun than I did like watching a
Yeah.
fucking slasher. You know, it's like
Yeah,
so bleak and it makes you think like, and it's so fucking sad, and it had that like lasting thing where I watched it and I was just like depressed for a while after. I was like, man, that just like hurts. Like that's just like
The
hurts to
amount
watch.
of the amount of sadness that this movie kind of conjures
Yeah.
for me at least is really impressive, I guess. A lot of people dislike this movie, which I think is kind of a big elephant in the room, I guess.
Yeah.
I want to say that part of the reason why there's a lot of noise happening upstairs. I hope that you can, but part of
Okay.
the part of the reason why people dislike this movie, at least that I can tackle, is that people dislike Laurie's characterization here. She
mhm.
and by extension the performance by the actress. And I want to say that that's the point of the movie a little bit. Is that it's not sunshine and rainbows when you are like
Yeah.
such a such a like an immense victim like this, right? And that is
Yeah.
like truly suffering, right? It's like you're not always likable, you're not always easy to deal with, you're not always like it's not
Yeah.
because that's the thing. Where it's like some people are like, I can't sympathize with this Lori, and it's like, well, you can. It came with your empathy for like seeing another human being suffer. You know,
Yeah.
it's like just
Yeah,
because you find her annoying, that's
And it's kind of like an anti-horror movie, and that like in the other movies or other movies that are like other slashers, the idea is that they just kind of like tell you these things. Like it's like you like that like trauma's important in the other Halloween movies, but they just kind of like tell you and like you're supposed to believe that. And it's like that's like the kind of central conflict of it. Whereas like this one just like shows it to you. And it's like
yeah,
not, you know, like it's like you actually just have to watch them go through it. Like the other movies, they just explain these things to you because you want 10 minutes of your 90-minute runtime to be about that so that you could like get it across and then still make
mhm.
it a slasher. And this movie instead is like, no, we're just gonna make half of the entire movie about that and way less of it a slasher because like we want you to actually feel like that's a real thing as opposed to just a thing that like a box you have to check because you're making a film about somebody who's like been through something. Like she's actually been through it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of. I mean, we talked about Tyler Mane. I think there's some interesting people to bring up in here. Malcolm McDowell is playing this film's
Yeah.
Loomis, and I think when you talk about like trying to replace Donald Pleasance is like an impossible task. I think Malcolm McDowell is like such a great get, and I think he's really interesting here as a Loomis who is different. And there's like an element of him like trying to. He's still very obsessed with Michael, but he's also like selling these books, and he's like talking at these things, and he's like selling this traumatic stuff that's going
Loomis
on.
is a sinister character in these movies in a way that
Yes,
he is not in the
and
previous movies,
yes,
and I think that is also a really really smart smart reinterpretation of the character. It's yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that part's really interesting. But again, really great at performance. Like he has a really great presence, of course. Also sort of like it's a smaller role, but I really love the fact that they got Margot Kidder from Black Christmas to be
Yeah.
the therapist here, like one of my favorite actresses. So she's
They
shown up here.
also
There's
get
some great.
Danielle Harris to play Annie, who
Who,
plays Jamie in the
yep.
movies that we were just talking about before.
Yeah,
But now she's like grown up and not a kid anymore, and they get her to play a different character in these movies.
yeah. What's his Brad Dourif's also in this movie, who's
Yeah.
incredible. I mean, it's a special movie for sure.
Yeah. No, this is my like for sure. When we were talking about kind of like the best movies, I think for me it really just is between this and the original. For
Yeah,
like the best in the franchise. I mean,
this would
uh,
be like I said, and then
like kind of like
it.
tiering
This
them, like we said
this
before.
would
Like
be in my
there's like
tier one for
clear, yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And then that brings us to the 3 movies in the modern trilogy.
The modern era.
Starting with Halloween 2018, which is a direct sequel to the first of the original movie.
There's 3 movies that are called Halloween.
Yes, and this is the 3rd one.
I don't like that. I'm gonna try.
No, I don't like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It feels like
new timeline.
it feels like because like Rob Zombie got to make one that was like a Halloween one. Like at this point, by the 2018 one, they probably should have thought of something else to like add.
Yeah,
to the
but what are you gonna
name,
call
but-
it?
In defense of the Rob Zombie one, it's a remake. This is
Well,
a
yeah, this one
sequel
is-
to
this
what
one
was
is a
called
sequel,
Halloween.
yeah.
This one is
They
a
could have
sequel.
named this like H2O. They could have named it Halloween 40 years later. instead of
H4O.
20. Yeah, they could
H4O.
have said Halloween 40
No,
years
yeah,
later,
but
and
that
then-
is a good point. Like this is.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
not.
sequel to
It's
the
not a
original
remake.
one.
Yeah, it's also
Yeah.
just a bad naming thing. It's like kind of the
It's
defining
what they
characteristic
did that
of this
for. They did that for
franchise.
Scream. The 5th Scream is just called
Yes.
Scream.
Which
that
that's
doesn't make
peak
any
stupid.
sense.
That's
That doesn't
really
make any
dumb.
sense
Yeah.
because. Yeah. Okay.
It's just like
whatever.
I don't know. It's weird because but even with like the that one
Yeah.
the 5th Scream movie, I mean, it's
You
like
can call
they're
it 5
they're doing
Scream.
like a new they're doing like a new era in the sense that it's like new kind of like main this one is like she's still in it. Like it's
Yeah.
the you know what I mean? So it's like I don't know. I guess they do legacy characters in the Scream movies too, but
Yeah.
still it's like this is still about Laurie. Like it's not even like they're just like making like these movies are still about her.
Well,
even though I guess they're also
it's
about other
silly because
people,
I mean
but-
we talked about it, but like them having no place to go, and the kind of the natural thing is like, all right, we'll just start a new timeline. Fuck it, start a new
Well,
one.
it's like,
Yeah.
dude, David Gordon Green. I don't know if he came up with this, whatever, but he's the director of all 3 of these movies. Whatever.
Yeah.
When they like, the idea for this trilogy is basically like, okay, what if we do H2O again, but we make Laurie even less interesting? We make
Yeah, well, that's the
Laurie
thing.
even,
Is
like-
that's why I like a lot of things I like about H2O is like her job and like what she's like. She's a lot going on, right? And then this is like, what if Laurie was like a freaking like
same.
she's like really crazy and like
Yeah.
has like guns.
Well, 'cause the thing is, when this movie, I said it before at the beginning of the pod, before we even started talking about these movies, is that like I had so much excitement back when this came out in theaters, and I think that painted this for me as like a movie that I really, really liked. And not until I revisited it now did I watch it back and I was like, wait, this like kind of does a lot that just like makes no, like it actually is like
Yeah.
way worse than I remember it being when I saw it in theaters. And I will say, I still kind of like this movie. I think it has some pretty good moments, but it kind of falls into like its own tier for me almost, where it's like it's above the 3 movies that I think suck, but then like it's not quite as
Sure.
good as the middle section for me. So it's like I
Yeah.
still like it, but I don't even really like it as much as most of the other movies. I just like it more than the 3 really bad ones. I don't know. It has like
I have it there as well. I have it as like the 4th worst.
yeah, that's where I have it. And it's kind of like I don't know. It's like I like it as like a thing. Like it's like I think it has like some moments that I really like. I really like
Yeah.
the specifically the kid who gets killed on the fence, like that whole little
Yeah.
5-minute section I think is just fun. Like cuz like first he's like this like desperate kid, then it's
Mhm.
like that and I there's just like
And
something
Michael
I
just like
really
stands there listening.
yeah,
to
and he
him.
like disappears with the light flickering, which I think is like kind of really fun. Like the idea that this kid just like is in this, I guess, like old man's backyard who he knows for some reason, probably. Like he frequently
Yeah.
goes through his backyard, and this man
Well,
like
it's
yells at
yeah,
him, I
he's
guess.
like, I gotta go do the shortcut. Right,
Yeah,
this is the
he like
shortcut.
always uses the shortcut, and the man just like doesn't like it. So then he's just like talking to him about his problems. Like I think it's like the whole scene I think is very
Yeah, it's a
fun.
cute scene.
And so like when I think
Well,
I think
that is like probably the most David Gordon Green
right.
of that of the film. Like that little like scene is like a very David
Yeah,
Gordon
and I
Greeny
like
kind of
that
scene.
part. Like it almost makes me like I think because I haven't seen it in so many years, I think about that part and in my head I was like, "Oh, I liked this movie so much more." And then
Yeah.
rewatching it, I was just like so much of this doesn't really make sense at all actually. Like it's just like kind of a mess almost. And yeah, like you said, like the Lori stuff is just kind of
Yeah.
bad. And like yeah, all of it is just like it's like really confusing, and you could really only appreciate it, I think, for like the couple of moments that I think are super fun in it.
The letterbox like description says Laurie Strode comes to her final confrontation with Michael Myers, the masked figure who has haunted her since she narrowly escaped his killing spree on Halloween night 4 decades ago, which is basically like the fucking description for like half of these movies. And I
Yeah,
think that that's kind of the big thing with this movie is it's like it doesn't give me anything new or interesting. It's just kind of a boring rehash. And it's like we're doing this again. And it's so it's not like the worst one, but it's like a one where I don't have to revisit this
I
one.
think
I'm
it's
not
just like a perfectly fine movie
it's like
that
whatever.
yeah.
It's just
It's like a
it's
normal mid like contemporary horror film. It's
Yeah,
yeah.
not
that's how I
listen,
feel
David Gordon
about
Green
it.
goes on to
Yeah,
direct worse fucking movies after
Yeah.
this one.
for sure.
But it's just like
He
I don't
directs a
know.
worse movie right after this
Yeah,
one,
we'll talk about that, but
which is called Halloween Kills, and that comes out in 2021. Um,
Halloween
I
Kills is one of the most annoying movies ever made.
Yeah, I was, like, shocked at how because I thought, like, I don't know, I was like, maybe I go back and
Same.
rewatch this one and I find something in it, and I was, like, falling asleep watching
They
it. I was like, "This
utterly
is
make a
dumb as
filler
hell."
movie. It's a slasher. It's like a slasher filler movie.
No, literally, I mean, it's like, narratively, like
They
and
didn't
this
know
is
what
kind
to
of what
do.
I
They didn't know what to do.
we'll get to this in Halloween Ends in a second, but, like, kind of remember when I said before, I was like, a lot of these movies just kinda, like, work on their own? I
Yeah,
think
this
when
movie
we'll get to Halloween Ends, I'm like, That's a movie that can only work on its own because the movie that comes directly before it makes, like, no sense at all. They just, like, do a you know what I mean? It's like that none of it
It's literally it's
it's
like a
so
bunch of people
confusing.
walk around and are like, "We're gonna kill Michael Myers," and then they just like say that for 90 minutes,
There
and then
is,
at the
like,
end, Michael Myers kills them
15
all.
scenes, like, not
Like
even exaggerating, there's, like, 15 scenes where they describe what
evil
Michael
dies
Myers did
tonight.
on Halloween night. They're like, "He lived there, and he murdered his sister," and then they tell you, like,
it's like
12
we
times.
know, we
It's like, "Yeah,
know.
we watched the movie," and not
It's like
only
the
did we
most
watch the movie, but
it's
the
like the most
last
pointless movie ever
movie
made.
it's like the 2018 movie that just came out before this explained what happened in the original. So like
Yeah.
what it's
Well,
almost like treating us like we didn't just watch the movie that is directly connected to this one.
it does this thing where it introduces legacy characters for people that like we don't really recognize because they were like
Yeah.
kids or like not important. So it's just like it treats them like it's like Han
Yeah, it brings
Solo on the
back that
Millennium
Tommy kid.
Falcon, but it's just like a older version of like it's like a like fucking Glub Shido like thing where it's like a reference to like a thing that like doesn't it's like okay. And it's
Yeah.
really bizarre because it like they become kind of like the main character because like Laurie is like fucking hospitalized the whole movie.
Yeah.
So
She's just like not in it.
you follow like Tommy and it's like
Did you
the
guys
what?
watch the director's cut, by the way?
There I don't think so.
It
Whatever movie was on
the
Hardy's Plex.
okay, because the only the so when I saw this in when I went to go like rent this movie online,
Yeah.
everywhere you go to rent it says like
Oh
the
wait.
director's cut.
No, I
And
didn't
so
watch it on Hardy's
and
Plex because it wasn't on there.
yeah, and so like I found that every place that you rent it only sells the director's cut now and not the theatrical one. And I was like, I
I don't
remember
know
watching
what
it in
version
theaters and
I
hating
watched.
it. And then I looked up what the difference was. It's only 4 minutes longer, but
Mhm.
all it does really is change the ending because in the spoiler alert for people who haven't watched this or give a shit, but in when it came out in theaters,
Yeah.
the Judy Greer character dying at the very end is like the last thing you see. Like it just that's it, and it ends there. But in the director's cut, they add in a scene where Jamie Lee Curtis, because she like wasn't even in the movie really, like, and that made no sense. They add a scene at the end where she like picks up the phone from the hospital and calls Judy Greer's character, and Michael answers the phone and she hears him
What
breathing,
the
and
fuck?
she's like, I'm gonna kill you. And then like the movie ends. I think because they wanted to like make it come
Yeah.
full, because like we were saying, like the movie makes no sense narratively and it's just like so aimless. And so I think that
So
was,
aimless.
yeah, so it's like,
It's
so I
like
think that
bro,
was,
it's like wasting your time. It's
yeah,
like
so I
literally
think
it's so
I think the
disrespectful to
goal
your
with that cut
time.
of the movie was to add that last scene so that it looks like all of this like mattered for some reason.
Sure.
And not that it makes the
Yeah,
movie any
I
better,
watched
but
this yesterday. I don't know what fucking cut I watched 'cause I don't remember. I
yeah,
don't remember if that was in the movie or not.
yeah, it's
I
bad.
will say one thing.
Michael Myers kills 80 people
Yeah.
in
I
the
will
end.
80-year-olds.
I will say one
Yeah.
thing. I do like as a concept, I do like the whole like because it is what we've been talking about this whole time. Or what I keep bringing up is like the whole like we gotta stop this. Like Michael can't keep doing this. I do like
Yeah.
the idea of like the town of Haddonfield like coming together and being like this has to stop. Like evil dies tonight, as they keep saying, right? Like
Right.
we have to kill this guy. Like I think that's like a smart
We gotta
idea.
kill this guy, Steven Universe.
But the
I
way
think I think it's a smart idea. I just don't think it's executed well at
the
all.
way
But I
they employ it is so strange because it's like the kind of idea of this like new trilogy is
Yeah.
how much this town is haunted by Michael Myers, but then the movies like repeatedly make it seem like the like nobody is
Yeah,
haunted
no
by
one gives a
Michael Myers. Like
fuck.
nobody gives a shit actually. Like the
It's
movies
just
are
these
they just
select
constantly
people.
remind you they're like everybody moved on except for Laurie and she's like crazy. But then they make
Yeah,
this
that
whole movie about how like we have to get rid of him because he just haunts us all the time. And it's like, does he? Like, does he
yeah,
haunt anybody at all? Actually, it's like I don't think anybody's bothered by him really. Actually, it's like they'd probably just be fine with
well,
him killing Laurie.
I think
Actually,
Tommy
like,
is bothered, but I do think like yeah, it is weird when you bring that up because it's like the whole thing is like Laurie is looked at as like this weird freak weirdo because she
yeah,
has PTSD, right? And then like the whole town like loses their mind, and there's a scene where they think this guy is Michael Myers and
Yeah.
he's not, and
yeah.
they force him to basically like jump off the fucking building
And it's
because
such
they're
like
gonna
a
kill
pointless.
him.
It's such a
That was so
pointless,
fucked
mean
up.
scene. It's like the movie.
Yeah.
There's actually two scenes in the movie that I
Well,
think are
no,
mean
so,
for no
like-
reason. Because that one lady just like gets stabbed in the neck and then watches her husband get stabbed repeatedly for, like
Do
like
you-
40 times.
Do
Yeah.
you remember when on the press tour for this movie, Jamie Lee Curtis said that this movie was kind of about the Black Lives Matter
What?
riots?
No, I don't remember that.
And
That's
it's
remember
like,
crazy.
Dude,
that's
they literally
really crazy.
it turns into January 6th in the
No, it turns
hospital.
into January 6th. It's like it is like about the movie is like okay, so let's give the movie a little bit of credit here. The movie is like about like this like horde mentality, you know, like
Sure.
what
Yeah.
happens when a lot of people
Well-
get like really consumed by this idea and it like grows and then it goes unchecked, right? And it's like yeah, it gets out of hand and it gets bad, but it's a lot of waste. It's a lot of people saying the same shit over and over again and wasting my
Yeah.
time, you know.
No,
Like,
I again, I do think the idea of the town itself, like over time, like this, like it's like a sort of like I'm not gonna do that comparison actually, but there's a traumatic event that happens to the people, and this is the like lasting effect of it, where it's like you know, and they become. But no, no. But they kind of like
They're
the
saying it's
evil-
Haddonfield's 9/11. They're saying it was 9/11 for Haddonfield.
evil dies tonight, walking around looking for Hassan. Like
What? No, but like you know, they become kind of evil because of this evil event, and then I don't know. There's interesting stuff to be. It just doesn't. It's not executed well, and it doesn't really make sense in the context of the last movie either.
Yeah. Which brings us to the last movie in the franchise as of right now.
Aptly
Halloween
titled.
Ends
Aptly
in
titled.
2022.
Well, it finally
But
fucking ends after
does
like
end.
6 movies.
It does end.
Yeah.
I did not like this movie when it came out in theaters. I watched it today, actually, prior to this
Oh.
recording. Had a great time. I
This
thought it
movie's-
was
is
lovely.
really It's
Yeah,
really good.
I was really I mean, I knew Doug liked it, but I was like after watching the first 2, I was like, "What the fuck, man?" Like, I don't know. I like some of the David Gordon Green movies, but so I don't know. I was expecting to be like, "Oh, maybe it's alright," but I wasn't expecting to be like a on the front lines for this one, but I really, really do like this movie, and I think like I mean, you mentioned we kind of mentioned that like one scene in Kills, right?
Yeah.
Was the first one that Kills I think it's Halloween, this first movie, the 2018 one, with the kind of scene where he dies, the that's we talked about that scene, the scene with the on the fence or whatever.
Oh, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay.
Um, and kind of talking about that scene being like the most like David Gordon Greeny of it. And I think this movie and Michael Mohan, who directed Immaculate, wrote like
Mhm.
a little review on this movie that I really liked, where he talks about this being like the new season of The Witch, like the new Halloween 3, and a movie that we'll look back on a little differently. And he talks about this being the film that is most like the early David Gordon Green movies. Like this is the film that kind of feels the most like All the Real Girls, and it's the most All the Real Girls that his genre film feels like. And you even mentioned Kevin Twilight in your review, but
Dude,
it
the
is
first like 45 minutes of this movie is just Twilight.
yeah. Well,
It's just like it's
on
literally just Twilight.
if you Google Halloween Ends on Google, it's horror romance, and it's like
Yeah.
one of the things that my issues with the new trilogy is like it's like Jamie Lee Curtis is doing Jamie Lee Curtis things, and I don't give a fuck about anybody else. And this immediately, first 10 minutes of the movie, it changes that. I think the first 10 minutes of the movie like really pulls you in because like what the fuck just happened?
No, the opening
Um,
scene is fucking
it's
gnarly.
it's insane,
It's
and it
awesome.
immediately has like a different feel to it. And a lot of people don't like this movie. A lot of it comes to like it doesn't really feel like a Halloween movie
A
because
lot of
it's
it, bro. People say this movie's like disrespectful to the legacy of Michael Myers, and I'm like, bro,
yeah.
have you seen these fucking dumbass movies? Like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, it's going on a completely like kind of different register, and it's a different movie, and I think like obviously whatever about the other movies that David Gordon Green has made, but I think when he has these two movies and they're received like whatever, from to go from Kills and kind of pivot into this, I think is a really strong thing, and this movie stands out as like a really singular like trying to do something different. Like we talk about like Curse and H2O and these movies that are doing something that are not just like rehashes. This
Yeah.
is one of those for sure.
This
Yeah.
I think like imagine the pitch for this movie, right? Is really interesting. Where it's like, what if a young boy gets possessed by the evil of Michael Myers? Like Michael Myers is reincarnated in this young boy, and Laurie's daughter falls in love with that boy. It's like
Oh, it's so good.
that's a crazy idea. Like what the
Yeah.
hell? Like that
No,
should like
extremely.
like that's cool. That's a
Yeah.
cool idea.
You guys remember when we did our podcast on favorite actors 25 and under and Doug couldn't find somebody, so he
It's
named
like he picked
Rohan
Rohan
Campbell?
Campbell.
Hey, he's
Yes,
great in this movie.
he
I
is.
mean he's awesome, but
He's
it's just
great.
very funny that Doug forgot like what's the kid's name from Asteroid City? The guy like the little boy that's not I guess he's like a bit of an older boy now, but he's in like
I don't
multiple Wes
know.
Anderson movies
Oh,
and Doug like skipped over him to pick Rohan Campbell.
yeah. Because listen, Rohan Campbell has aura in this
Yeah, no,
movie.
I mean
I
he's good.
really like him. I really
Yeah.
do. It's tough and it's sad because this movie being like received the way it like was, it didn't really propel
Yeah, I
him
mean it's
to.
not gonna send him in a good direction.
But he
But
is going to be in a movie that we probably, well, maybe
Won't
me and Doug
like.
probably won't like. But he's going to be in the Monkey,
Mhm.
the new
oh
Oscar
shit.
Perkins movie,
Yeah, yeah.
which is his first movie since Halloween Ends. So that's good for him. I hope to see more of him because he is really great in this film. And like Doug said, I think the premise of this film is really strong because Michael Myers himself is like kind of this kind of figure character like very devil character, and it is like kind of like this he is trauma in like a physical form, and for trauma or your past trauma to kind of come into this thing, and then all of a sudden like the devil himself is kind of dating
Yeah.
your daughter, or like your whatever you're kind of relative there.
Granddaughter
Yeah,
is what you called the
yeah,
daughter
Yeah,
of the
oh, it
father.
is the granddaughter. Sorry, I said
well,
daughter earlier.
yeah, well, it is because she like kind of is like adopting her in this film because
Yeah.
of the death. Um, but I don't know. It's interesting too because it's not just like it's a different take of like than Michael or in kind of this like it's not like his house I guess his upbringing wasn't great, but it was more of like one bad event happened that he couldn't really control, and now everyone is looking at him a certain way, and they kind of talk about it in the movie where it's like the boogeyman is gone, they need a new boogeyman, and
Yeah.
like the fact of like evil dies tonight, you know, the whole like we need to get rid of Michael Myers, we need to stop doing this, and then once they get rid of him, they need a new boogeyman.
They need a new
Yeah.
Michael Myers. Yeah,
They so
it's
Yeah.
they need a new boogeyman, so they push this guy who never did anything wrong. They push him to become the new boogeyman
Yeah.
because they like kind of need one. So it's like kind of this like self-fulfilling prophecy of this
yeah,
town
yeah, self-fulfilling
where
prophecy.
Yeah.
they constantly for decades and decades were trying to get rid of the boogeyman, and once they get rid of him, they immediately
Yeah.
create a new one because that is just what they fucking do.
Which
And
is like
I
an
think it's
interesting idea
really
about
interesting.
suburbia that like ties into the first, but like it's like the movie's kind of
Yeah,
abandoned talking about that, but then this actually like poses something interesting about it.
it's like they need that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like this movie a lot. Even talking
Yeah.
about it, I'm like, oh, this movie's so good.
Yeah.
It
No, it is. It is. I was surprised at how much I liked it
It's
this time
also
around.
it's super fun. Like
Yeah, no, it's so fun.
I
I really
talk
liked
about
calling him
uh
Sewer Mike every time he showed up. For some reason, I just gave him that nickname, and every time Michael would pop up, I'd be like, "Oh, it's Sewer Mike." I
well,
just had
that's
a
the
really
thing.
fun time
I
doing
like
that.
how this movie kind of really goes face to face with this idea where it's like, listen, Michael Myers is an elderly man now. You know, it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
oh, it's like,
he's like an old master.
yeah, no, yeah, he's
Well,
like Master
cuz
Roshi in the
Jamie
sewers.
Jamie Lee
Yeah,
Curtis is like I don't know, 60, 70,
Yeah,
yeah. I don't know
and,
what age she's supposed to be in the movie.
but Michael is like 10 years older.
hmm
You know, it's like Jamie Lee Curtis is has a granddaughter who is like in her 20s or something,
Yeah,
or like, you know, a teenager. Um and Michael is like older. Oh, Michael is older than her. So
yeah,
and even like there were scenes in Kills where he has his mask off and he is like really old. He is really
yeah,
old, which is interesting to even the fact that they were like for the like 2018 version were the fact that they were like, hey, we're gonna do a sequel to the first movie 40 years later, and we're gonna
yeah,
trot out old ass Jamie Lee Curtis, and she's gonna fight old ass Michael Myers is
yeah. But he's like
ridiculous.
year 22 LeBron. Like he hasn't lost a step, dude. Like
No,
it's like the
he's
strength hasn't gone down, the stamina hasn't got like it's like
yeah,
by this movie not so much, but in the 2018 one at least, like he's just moving still. Like
yeah.
he's
No,
65 years old and
this
he's a fucking he's
it's
a,
he kind of becomes like Bill Russell head coach in this movie, where he's
yeah,
like you know, he really recently was a player, but he had a you know now he's got to
yeah.
coach the
You
guys
might
and
even call in the modern day, you might even call him a bit of a JJ Redick.
okay, yeah,
but I do say like we're kind of like praising the movie and stuff, but the movie does then by the end of it get rid of Rohan Campbell's character completely and just do
Yeah.
the first movie again.
Yeah, that is true. That part does stink a little bit.
It is just turns into another like, oh, Jamie Lee Curtis or what's her name? Fuck. Laurie has like
Yeah,
earned her final face off with Michael Myers again for the third, fourth
right.
time.
I do think it's funny
yeah.
that they have a "We Killed Michael" parade at the end. Well, that's like a fun idea that they like parade his corpse through the entire town and they
Yeah,
just
what do they
like
put him in? They put
they,
like
well,
they just carry him, I think,
no,
right?
they
no,
put
it's
him
like
in a thing, right?
Oh,
Am
I
I
don't
crazy? I don't know.
I
Whatever.
didn't really pay attention to that detail,
no, but they do
but
like they're like it's like he's
they have a
surfing the
float. It's
crowd.
like
He's
they
like
build a float for it.
I don't mind that because it is Halloween ends. Like I think like if they were to make a movie after this, like it wouldn't make any sense. Like if because they killed him and they fucking
Right,
Michael's to
yeah, if there was a
pieces.
movie that followed it up, then you would be upset
It
at the absence of him,
well,
whereas, like,
it would
it's
make
just
no
15 minutes
sense. It would
without
make
him.
no sense for them to not only fucking cut Michael to bits and like he's got like you can't bring him back, right? And then get rid of Rohan Campbell. That wouldn't make sense. But I think the fact that it's Halloween Ends. This is the last one in this timeline, right? Uh, I think it's fine for them to have the actual final showdown with those two because that's like the whole thing of like we're doing the final showdown. We're doing the final showdown, and it would be kind of a little weird for them to like do like a movie where like yeah we're gonna do it and that's how we're gonna end it. We're gonna end it without doing it. I think it's like
I
whatever.
think it would have been good if they didn't do it. If it was just actually like, yeah,
Well,
guess what?
so
Michael
what?
Myers is gone, and now it's
So
just like this
does she
other
just
guy.
defeat Rohan Campbell and that's the end of the movie?
I don't know. Maybe you can make it fucked up. You can make it like evil never dies, brother, and Rohan Campbell doesn't get defeated.
And he kills
And he becomes the
Jamie
new
Lee
Michael
Curtis.
Yeah, and he
Myers
kills
when they
Jamie Lee
make.
Curtis.
Oh,
Fuck it,
okay.
yeah. You know, like I don't
That
know.
would be pretty.
That
Yeah.
if he
I-
killed Jamie Lee Curtis in this movie, it might have like a 1.2 on Letterboxd. People will
Listen,
be
it
like
can't get much
rioting in the
lower than
streets.
what it already has.
No, I
mean, you
know.
might as well.
I don't mind the ending. I
Yeah,
think
I'm fine with it. Also, he gets killed so close to the like. It's like you don't even really like he
Yeah.
gets killed and then the movie ends 8 minutes later. Like it's
Yeah.
you know.
But no,
It does feel like it has a little bit of like there's 15 writers on this movie syndrome a little bit.
Yeah.
Which I will say
It's
because
like
there's
doing a
15
lot.
writers for this movie. That's like there
Yeah,
are
it's
a
like
million
doing a
writers on this
lot,
movie.
but
sure.
I like this
But
one.
I like it. Like I think going back to like the David Gordon Greenness of it. Like it's just at its core, it's like a drama romance with people dying, and it has like kind of like the
Okay.
Twilight thing of like it's
Yeah.
just heightened. It's heightened drama where it's drama.
She
It's
like
real
meets
life.
him and she's drawn to him right away as well. Like it's like there's
real
no
life.
like
Yes,
yeah.
but it's like the real life romance, but then it's also like it's the real life thing of like I mean obviously this could happen in real life, but like it's like the thing where like he's getting bullied and then the bullying leads to like you know him getting thrown off the bridge and then him going like killing people and it's like it's
Yeah.
very like dramatic fucking stuff going on. And like even like the whole like babysitter stuff at the beginning is like super like over the
Right.
top, but it is kind of it has a very strong like that tone kind of carries throughout that is really compelling.
Yeah. You guys don't have a Halloween ranking, do you?
I do, but it's
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 like
more of like
loose.
the tier thing. I could just like kind of go through my
You could tier
tiers.
it. Yeah. I just
I
you
could
know,
do a
just as like a
Halloween ranking.
a recap to
Yeah.
I could go first while Doug figures his out.
Okay.
So from last place to first place, I've got Resurrection and last, then Halloween 5, then Halloween Kills, then Halloween 2018,
Mhm.
Halloween 2, the 1981 version, Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, H2O, Halloween Ends, and then into the top 5, Season of the Witch, Rob Zombie's first Halloween, Halloween 4, Rob Zombie's second Halloween, and then the original in first place.
Okay. No,
Owen, you want
that's
to do yours
yeah.
in tier form?
Yeah. So I mean, so my last here is like basically like word for word what you said. So like I have like Resurrection, 5 Kills, and then
Yeah.
2018, and then like my next like I would say like this is like the mini tier would be 2 and 4.
Mhm.
With like I probably give the edge to 4 there, and then like the big chunk of like I think I all have these like 3.5. Like I think these are really solid. Would be Rob Zombie's first movie, H2O, Halloween Ends, The Curse of Michael Myers, and then the original film. I think those are all really solid. Really like those movies. And then like 1A, 1B would be Halloween 3, Season of Witch, and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2.
okay.
Douglas, you have yours?
Yeah, so start off a little similar, right? From worst to best would be Resurrection, 5, then Kills,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and then
So
I
we all have the
have
same bottom 3.
H2O.
That's something we
and then I
agree
have
on.
H2O.
Okay.
And then it's 2018 for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it goes 2,
Okay.
4,
Okay.
then The Curse of Michael Myers,
Okay.
and then I'm gonna go John Carpenter's Halloween. And then I'm gonna
Okay.
go Halloween Ends.
Yep.
Halloween 3, Halloween directed by Rob Zombie, and then Halloween 2 directed by Rob Zombie is the
Okay.
last one.
So I don't think there's like too much disagreement. I guess the things that would stand out is that I have 4 higher than you guys, and you guys both have 3 in the top tier.
Mhm.
But, like, when I rewatch 3, it might
Yeah,
go up.
and
I know.
and me
Yeah,
and you both like H2O more than Doug, but I
sure.
mean most of our
You 2 both like the original significantly less than me. But in general, like, we
well,
agree
mine's
on the bottom,
third.
and then we
Mine's
feel
like third on my list, so
sure, yeah, yeah. But we agree on, like, what the worst are, and then, like, we even
yeah,
put the ones that we like in similar tiers to each other, so I feel like it's a pretty
yeah.
uniform
I mean,
agreement across the
there's some slight
franchise.
disagreements, but I
Yeah,
think most of them we kind of have
yeah. I mean, I
similar.
really would say I like at least a little bit all of these movies except for the bottom 3, and then
Yeah, no,
everything else I could watch. A couple of them I wouldn't like 2018, now that I've seen it again, I don't think I'd go out of my way to rewatch anytime soon.
yeah.
But, like, most of these I would rewatch at any given point, like, any October, like, any build up to Halloween, I would put these on again every single year.
The
Like,
Curse of Michael Myers will be rewatched
I
probably
I
a
think
couple of
next
times for
October,
sure.
if I had to guess next October, I would probably watch Season of the Witch and then, like, either 4 or the original. I would like to rewatch Rob Zombie's 2 movies, but the thing is that doesn't seem like it could be a yearly tradition because 'cause they're, like, too bleak. They're not, like,
Yeah.
October, like, fun
It
horror
is
movie
not
vibes enough.
jolly.
They're just, like
It's
yeah, there's nothing really
the
jolly about those, so I don't think that could become a tradition. I think those will just have to
yeah.
be when
Well,
I
that's the big thing
am
with like
up
the
for it.
2 for me. I think like obviously the one I can watch the most would be 3, but I think
Yeah.
the one that I and it's a lot of it has to do with the fact that I've only seen it once, but the one I'm like itching to rewatch the most right now is Kills or not Kills,
Yeah.
Ends.
Yeah,
Ends.
and yeah, definitely not Kills.
Because
Um,
I really that one caught me off by surprise of
yeah.
being like, "Oh, I really like this," and there's a lot of like just knowing how it ends and knowing how the whole thing progresses, I'd like
How
to
it
see it from the
ends.
start.
Yeah. Oh,
How
that's
Halloween ends
the
and how
end of our
this
Halloween
ends.
conversation, but we could talk about news really quickly. As always, the usual reminders to share some feedback. If you liked our full Halloween breakdown there, you can like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. You could rate the episode on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and you could follow us on all of our social media, which will be in the episode description. News wise, we've got not a ton of stories, but a number of like pretty big ones. Starting
Yeah.
with, I think, the obvious. Tom Holland has been cast in a lead
Oh yeah.
role in Christopher Nolan's next film alongside Matt Damon. Deadline reported that Holland has been high on Nolan's list for some time now, and there have been several rumors about the plot of the film, but the most recent one is that the film will follow a pair of aerial helicopter cops, an old mentor, and a younger lead played by Damon and Holland.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
Um,
it's supposed to be a
that's
remake of Blue Thunder. What's it called?
like
yes,
it maybe not
not
remake, but
remake,
like
but
like
inspired by.
yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that's the most likely case, and it makes sense with Damon in Holland. I think that is like perfect
Yeah, that sounds
casting.
awesome. I'm
I'm really
down.
pumped for it.
But
Uh,
imagine if it was Robert Downey Jr. in Holland. You know what I mean?
well, it's gonna
Imagine
be
if that was
annoying how
like
many times we're gonna have to hear that on the internet when the movie comes out. Actually, you just brought that to my attention that's something that I'm gonna have to read a tweet about once a day for at least the 5-week window before and after the release of the movie.
No,
Um,
yeah.
like
and
from the time the first trailer comes out and on,
they, they
we're just gonna have to hear about that a lot.
they said it's gonna be a lot of like practical helicopter flying stuff in it. Like
Yeah,
similar to Top Gun Maverick, which is that's cool.
yeah. No, I mean
I don't
that's
know.
a fun.
Helicopters aren't as exciting as jets, so I don't know what he has planned in
No,
store for like
but
set pieces,
helicopters, I
but
feel like you could do a little bit like
they kind
You
of
do
freak you
more.
with
there's
it.
like
Remember
it's like a
when
little more
Tom Cruise
chaotic with like the surroundings and
You
like
can
remember
do
that
whatever
more
helicopter
stunt
else.
stuff
stunt
with the
in
Yeah.
in Fallout when Tom Cruise is hanging off by a rope? He doesn't have a
Yeah.
heart. He's just hanging off by a rope off the helic. It's insane. It's
Yeah, the stunts could be
ridiculous.
fun.
Yeah, you can just do it.
I don't
Yeah,
know
you
that
can.
either of these
It's
guys is
more
Tom
open.
Cruise, but
Well, Tom Holland is not obviously not Tom Cruise, but he is like a stunt guy.
He
Like
did
he is
stunts
like
in
a
yeah.
Uncharted
Yeah.
yeah, he
Yeah.
is.
and the
He's a
Spider-Man
stunt guy,
movies. Yeah,
He could do some helicopter stuff.
yeah.
and
That'd
he
be fun.
that's like he makes a lot of sense as like young actor stunt guy. Like there's not
Yeah.
really another like when you think about like Timothy Chalamet's not like doing like big stunts and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's
No,
kind
I
of
mean, it makes sense that Nolan had his eyes on him for a while. I
he's kind
guess,
of
for, like,
perfect for something like
if
that.
this is the idea. Yeah. That'll be
Finally
cool.
gonna be in a good movie.
Yeah,
for him.
thing.
that's
Good
exciting.
for him.
Crazy.
That's the thing. John Carpenter.
Next piece of news is about a
Oh my
movie that
God.
you didn't like, and now you're gonna have to watch another one of them that you don't like, probably, if I had to guess. A sequel to Alien Romulus is reportedly
Bitch.
in development, with Kaylee Spaney and David Johnson expected to return.
Yeah, I mean,
Sure, yeah, it's gonna happen. Yeah, we kind of saw this one coming when it made like $300 million or whatever.
So there's gonna be
Uh,
another Xenomorph?
I guess, yeah. Is it not
well,
just the
so
second half of the ship? Is it not just the other?
oh, is it Remus?
Yeah, Remus or
Oh, yeah,
whatever.
you're
I'm
right.
assuming that
yeah.
that's what the sequel would be
Alien
about.
Remus?
It has to be, right? It'd be weird if it was about anything else.
What's about? What would you rather it be called? Alien Remus or Alien Romulus 2?
I'd rather
Alien Romulus 2 is a terrible name, I think. But Remus is a weird marketing thing unless you've seen Romulus.
Remus doesn't roll off the tongue like Romulus does.
No, Remus sounds like bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like
It
penis.
sounds like a Three Stooges ass like alien movie. Like it's like you know, like
Alien
it sounds like
Remus.
it sounds like
Alien
a comedy.
yeah,
Yeah,
fucking
like it's like it
fucking
doesn't
Moe
really
and
fit the
Curly
bill.
and shit, dude.
Yeah,
oh
it doesn't
my.
really fit the bill. But no,
I
yeah.
I would want so like there's like the whole thing in Romulus where like she's trying to get like to that other planet. And like I think it would be cool if like she actually
She
like
goes there.
she actually like succeeded to get to that planet, like the
There's
paradise
fucking
fucking planet,
aliens.
and she brings like by accident like the fucking so it's like it's more like
Yeah.
Covenant or like they're on the ground, like boots on the ground, they're in this new
Yeah.
planet, and then like it's fucking like a slasher like
Yeah.
thing.
Well, they could bring the second half of the ship, not knowing that
yeah,
Remus is waiting
the
too.
Remus
Yeah.
got it in him. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. That's just like immediately what I think of, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe it can only go up from here, I
Hey,
guess.
yeah, sure. I think you guys would be interested in this piece of news. Michael Cera and Amelia Jones have joined the cast of Edgar Wright's The Running Man.
Oh yeah, I mean, what do you mean? That's the movie
yeah.
we've been pushing every week on this.
No, I
pod.
know, but like it's just like it's not like the main character, you know. But Michael Cera.
I mean, Michael Cera
great
coming
everything.
back to do an Edgar Wright movie, that's huge.
Hey, you guys have any opinions about Amelia Jones?
Oh wait. Okay, I just like immediately like I'm just like Michael Cera should be the game show host. Like
Yeah.
I haven't seen The Running Man, so I don't know.
so
Who the game show host
so
is.
like getting all these castings like so you're getting Brolin and you're getting all these like tough guys, right? They're gonna be like the villains and they're gonna be like the people in the game show host trying to kill Glenn Powell. And then Michael Cera will be like the guy like hosting. Like it's like Hunger Games.
Yeah, that's probably the vision.
It's like Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Like he's like that's perfect. I don't expect I wouldn't think he would be anybody else.
Yeah.
But also I thought Kay O'Brien was gonna be the co-lead, but it seems like she's gonna be in the she's gonna be a different character. And they did cast the co-lead, but I forget her name. Is that what you did? You say that, or was that?
Well, I just said Amelia Jones is casted
Oh,
as well.
no, that's
It's from Amelia Jones from Coda fame.
I'm not familiar with her.
She's the lead in Coda, the Best Picture winning
yes
movie, Coda.
So but she's just gonna be. I don't know who she's gonna be.
I assume she's a smaller character and what's going to be a pretty big cast. But despite what people will say about Coda,
she could probably just be a contestant.
A fine actress.
She could be a contestant.
Yeah.
Or like someone. I don't know. I mean, they could always add new characters or like there. It was Jamie Lawson who was the. I think that's the co-lead.
Okay, I see. Another piece of casting news, unless Doug has something to say about Michael Cera and Amelia Jones joining.
No, I mean I don't know. I haven't seen.
Okay.
I mean, it's cool. This movie seems like it's going to be a big deal. Like it seems like it's going to be a whole thing. So
that'd be cool.
Yeah.
A different piece of casting news: John Magaro joins Kelly Reichardt's The Mastermind. Kind of expected as a frequent
squirrel found in tree
collaborator. Yeah.
Soap found in shower.
Yeah. Well,
John
No, I
Magaro
mean,
is in that
I
September
Yeah.
5 movie you've been talking about.
He
he's
is
in
in that
the
as
te-
well. Yeah,
he's also in the
he's in
January
many a
6th
movies.
movie.
He's in many a movies,
He's a great
including.
he's one of the goats.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he was
awesome.
in Umbrella Academy.
Was
I mean, I wouldn't know about that.
Yeah,
How do you know that?
he's the main villain in the first movie. Or
First
sort of, not first
season.
season. He's kind of the bad guy, sort of.
Okay.
Well, he's like, he's
Bro
Elliot
said he's the
Page's
main
like.
He's
villain,
booked and
and
busy,
then said
huh?
he's kind of a bad guy.
Wow, well, that's like there's like the twist. It's like a twist.
Yeah, you
Okay.
don't want to spoil it
Like,
for
he's-
those of us who are going to watch.
He's
the
like
Umbrella
Elliot
Academy.
Page is like, he's like, like the violin or something, and like, John Magaro is like he comes over and he's like learning the violin, and then they like start dating, and that's like Umbrella Academy.
I see. Yeah, I mean this is obvious casting, but it's like cool. That he's
Yeah.
gonna be
What
in
if he's playing his Umbrella Academy character in this movie?
That won't happen.
What
I
if
don't
he's
think.
playing a reincarnated version of his first cow character?
What if he's playing Vincent
Also
Van
won't
Gogh?
happen, I
What if
think.
he's
I'm
playing
pretty sure that's
Batman?
gonna happen.
What if
Yeah.
what
What if
if
this movie's like a stealth Batman movie?
Not sure any of these things are gonna happen.
Imagine.
imagine Kelly Reichardt's Batman?
That would be badass.
It'd be kind of. I'd actually watch that.
Of course you would. What do you mean?
What if that happened and Kevin was like, "Nah, I ain't even seen it."
Yeah, what do
No,
you
I'm
mean?
just
You're
like-
I would actually watch that.
No,
Yeah,
No,
Bro,
because
he's
like
like,
there's like 4 people in the world who would be excited about that idea.
no, so many people
No,
would be
you
excited
know what
about that.
happened? If Kelly Reichardt got signed on to direct the new Batman movie, there would be a whole lot of new Kelly Reichardt fans.
Yeah,
People would start
which would be
watching First Cow.
awesome.
The kids would,
Yeah.
the youth would start watching First Cow and be like, "Fuck, this movie's gonna be boring."
Where does she teach?
Yeah.
The university she teaches at, those film classes would be fucking hard as fuck to get into.
Yeah.
The next
I mean,
semester.
Yeah.
Where does
Our
she teach?
last.
Yo,
you
James
could look it
Gunn.
up. You could look
got
it
an
up while I
idea.
break
We
the
got an
last piece of
idea
news.
for
This
ya.
is a long one to read if you want to just like, or you could just let's just look it up. Just find out where she teaches.
Yeah, let's just look it up.
Yeah, let's just get an answer.
Let's just like chill here for a
At
second.
She lives-
Bard College. She teaches
Okay.
film at Bard
She
College.
teaches at a hard college.
Bard College.
My
Right.
grades, I couldn't get into
Is
hard
that-
college.
Is Bard in? Is that New York?
I don't know. Well, it says she previously taught at NYU and Columbia.
Okay.
She
I
gets
was under
around.
the impression that she lives in the Pacific Northwest because all her movies are about it, but maybe she just grew up there.
Maybe she's fake.
No, I don't think it'd be.
Yeah, Bard College is in New York.
Okay.
Shouldn't you know that? Kevin?
Notable alumni, Chevy
No-
Chase.
Know where she lived? Why would I know where she
Hey!
lives?
Hey,
What
everyone,
the
drop a
frick?
Chevy Chase 2024 in the comments below.
Yeah, shout out all my Saturday night fans.
Woo, woo.
Um,
All right.
okay. Last piece of news is a two-parter. And normally I don't think we would be talking about. I usually avoid news where it is an actor making their directorial debut because I know they're almost always movies you guys aren't excited about.
Yeah.
But in this case, I think it's worth mentioning both of these movies because of the people being cast in them. So 2 actors making directorial debuts with casts. Maud Apatow to make her feature directorial debut, Poetic
Maud.
License, with Andrew Barth Feldman, Cooper Hoffman, Leslie Mann, and Nico Parker to star. It follows Liz, a former therapist and soon-to-be empty nester, as she becomes the unexpected point of tension between 2 inseparable best friends and college seniors. And then Coleman Domingo is set to make his directorial debut with Scandalous, which will follow the clandestine love affair between film star Kim Novak and singer, dancer, and film star Sammy Davis Jr. in 1957. And it will star Sydney Sweeney and David Johnson as Novak
yes.
and Davis.
Yeah.
This
No,
is major. This is major. Yeah.
Not that this is not what happens normally on the platform, but there was a lot of like really gross responses on
really
X.
awful replies to this piece of
because
news.
it was Sydney Sweeney being in a movie where she would be involved with a black man. So Elon's Twitter kind of was like, "Fuck, dude, I love Sydney Sweeney. I can't support this." Like,
Yeah,
was
and
like
they
it was
like
really
there's
weird.
literal just like Nazis in the replies. It's like
Yeah, it
crazy. It's
was.
crazy how effective of a platform he's built.
This
Yeah, it
movie is
was
really
bad.
interesting. I'm excited for this. I don't
Yeah.
Coleman Domingo is a very, obviously super talented actor, very handsome man. But
I
I'm
don't know how that's
interested.
really.
I'm interested in like what kind of like filmic language
He
he's
just
gonna
couldn't
bring to the
hold
table
back.
here. Um,
He's like, I gotta.
obviously the casting is amazing. Any project that Sydney Sweeney is in
Yeah,
is
tell
like
us about Sydney Sweeney while
is
you're at
immediately
it.
is immediately interesting.
No,
Yeah,
please, please give her a similar
yeah.
descriptor.
What is she? What is
Oh,
what do we think
What
about
are her
Sydney?
notable features?
oh.
Very
Oh,
nice
well, it's
lady.
also it's good to hear about Sydney Sweeney being in a movie
I'm sure it
after
is
she
for you. Yeah.
after she fucking signed that Sasquatch ad deal and it's like the worst ad campaign of all time. Have you guys seen these ads?
I've seen the
They're
ad. Yeah,
everywhere.
I've seen it. It's
No,
on
I don't.
Hulu every
You
time
know what,
you watch
guys?
it.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of this or seen this, or I don't even know what you're
Crazy.
saying.
Shut
You're
up,
not
dude.
tapped in.
It doesn't
Also,
appear on
what's
my
the guy's
internet.
name? I'm sorry, because it's the guy from Alien Romulus and
David
Industry.
Johnson.
David
Yes, it was
David
Johnson.
Johnson. Yes.
With no
I'm.
N.
Have you
What?
have
There's
you
two N's in it.
seen?
What do you mean no
Two-
N? How can your name be Johnson without an N?
No, it's like there's two S's.
Yeah, there's
Industry,
no H is what I
right?
think you mean.
He's like a major character in Industry, right, Kevin?
He is
Yeah,
the
he's
main
pretty
character
big in the industry at this point.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
Yeah.
how is he in that? Because I've only seen him play like a robot with Asperger's in the Alien movie.
He is the best performance.
he's like the
in
same
history.
thing. He plays that every time.
He's one of the two best performances. in
He's
the
always
industry. I'm not even
playing
done.
C-3PO.
I stopped my industry binge. I'm not even done with season 1 yet. But from what I've seen, he is one of the two best performances in the show.
What's his vibe there? Like what kind of what's like
He
what he's
plays
bringing?
he plays a gay guy who is like I don't know. He's like really good at his job.
Can you
Is
do
he
he's
like
his
really
voice?
like stuck up and like
Can you do
Yeah,
his
kind of.
voice?
He's a bit of a snob, and he's a bit of a snob, and he is just like really good at his job, and he's like maybe at times a little overly ambitious
Is he
because of
a
how
is
good
he a
at his job he is.
Nor?
Is he what?
I just combined fucking nerd and dork, and I was just like,
No,
he-
no, he's like the thing about industry is that like you can't be a nerd in it because everybody is just like hot and has lots of sex and they want to do it with each other all the time.
okay.
okay.
He seems like he might be a pretty transformative actor. I'm interested in this.
No, I think he's
I'm
like a
interested in
real
this.
star. I think
Yeah.
he's like really like
Yeah.
gonna be. I mean, I kind of was on this train when Rye Lane came out. I think I might have mentioned him even in one of those actor pods we did.
Yeah, probably.
But I've been a
You
fan,
should've.
and Romulus kind of confirmed everything that I already believed about him
Yeah.
as well as industry. And now I'm
He's
just like, yeah,
older
he's
than I
just-
thought he was.
He's just great. Yeah, I think he's like 32.
He's
Damn!
31.
Okay,
Yeah.
31. Yeah,
He seems so much younger.
yeah.
He's got like
But there's like it's one of those things where it's like if you're in your early 30s, late 20s, and you have a young enough face, you could just like play a teenager for a while until or like near a teenager for a while.
I mean, that's what Sydney Sweeney did for
Yeah, I mean
for
that's like
Euphoria.
that's like what everybody in history has had to do, kind of, because they're always casting people who are older than high school age to play high schoolers, so they're relying on people with young faces and that are older than high schoolers.
yeah. I mean, it's like it takes a while to kind of make it to a point, unless like you get really lucky.
It gets to a
Um,
point.
Yeah.
So like, I mean,
So
it's
wait, so
natural-
just to be clear, you guys are way more excited for that one than the Maude Apatow movie.
Well, I
correct?
wanted to circle back because we
Okay.
kind of like really
You just glimpsed right over it.
we
yeah.
jumped on like the whole Sydney Sweeney, like there was just a
Yeah.
lot of hotness.
Doug was
going
talking
on
about how
the
hot
other-
Coleman Domingo
Yeah,
is. He's like-
yeah, and like we got really like Doug got really distracted.
yeah.
And
He does that a lot, by the way, when he talks about.
I think like the other movie is worth bringing up because I do really like Andrew Barthelman and
Yeah.
Cooper Hoffman, and
Yeah.
I didn't watch Saturday Night Live, but I know they were both in that. And I as like interested in their careers. Obviously, like I'll keep tabs on this. Maude Apatow directing this is interesting.
Yeah,
one of
she's
her-
like 26 years old. right?
One of our
How
notable
old is she?
nepo babies. But she's great. Like love
Oh,
Maud.
yeah,
Wait,
she
also
rocks.
from
Shout out.
Euphoria, right?
Also from
Yeah,
before. Oh, she's
Yeah.
literally 26. I just fucking killed that.
Leslie
That was
Mann
great.
is her mother, right? She was
Kevin
cast
Martin, you
Yes.
directing movies. You're 26.
I'm
because
not 26.
the guy who
I'm not 26 at all.
you remember when Will Smith got slapped and her dad was like, he could have killed
He
him.
could have killed him. Remember when Will Smith got slapped and what was it? It was Zoe Kravitz was
Zoe
like,
Kravitz was like, "Oh, so now we're assaulting people
"Yeah,
at the
now we're
Oscars?"
assaulting people on which granted, she was right technically.
I
Sure,
mean-
she was right. I still think this is like I can't believe that this
Will
is like
Smith
a
got
thing that's so many.
banned from the
I
Oscars
can't believe that
for
this is the thing
100
that's so many.
years.
I'm gonna say something controversial, and people like some of our friends even fucking were like, "You're dumb for saying that."
Oh.
You could just like slap people. You
Will
know?
Smith,
Like,
you cannot just slap people.
no, you can't just like slap people, but it's like you can't make a big deal about it and be like, "Oh, we're assaulting people." He fucking slapped him in the face.
Yeah.
Who cares? Like it's like who
Hey,
gives a
man.
shit? Like it's like
Guys
you know what
get
I mean?
slapped
It's like
every
if
day.
I got
spank
mad at one of my
people. We
if I
gotta
got mad
spank
at one of
people.
my
What are
friends,
you
I would
talking
slap
about?
him in the face. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
like
Kevin
you just-
slaps me all the time.
Okay,
slaps
come
him
on.
around.
Okay,
Slaps
don't
him around.
Okay. Jesus Christ.
Has
Okay,
like a bottle of like
no,
like,
let's end the pod.
like whiskey
I think.
in the
Let's
other
end the
hand.
pod before this gets bad. 'Cause I'm already on hot water. People already have opinions about me. Okay. We're gonna wrap up there next week. Episode 90, only 10 episodes away from our 100th. We'll be talking about one of the year's big movies and one of the main Oscar contenders, Honora, directed by Sean Baker. So we'll see you later.
Honora.